Chapter 3860. After that, Yangshu did not ask about Zhuowen's background anymore. Instead, he chatted with Zhuowen about trivial matters, especially when Yangshu mentioned about the Liyuan main region. Zhuowen naturally did not know about these things. He only touched on these topics briefly and did not delve too deeply. Thus, he did not arouse Yangshu's suspicion. "Oh right, sect leader, I heard that Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial is about to start. Is there anyone from your divine firmament soul sect participating in this trial?" During the conversation, Zhuowen suddenly interrupted and asked about Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial. Yangshu looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He did not expect him to be interested in Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial. Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial was a big deal to the entire Wukong state. However, to the prodigies of the Heavenly Demon Clan, it was a trivial matter. However, since Zhuowen asked, Yangshu naturally would not avoid the question. Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial is basically targeted at the disciples of Hongwu Shengzhen's subsects. It has nothing to do with our divine firmament soul sect. Yangshu smiled. Zhuowen did not panic and continued. "Of course, I know that. However, Hongwu Shengzhen's quota is not only limited to the subsects. They will also allocate a quota to other sects that they think have potential. The divine firmament soul sect's power in middle ground is enough to be ranked in the top 10. I think Hongwu Shengzhen must have noticed it," Zhuowen said calmly. Yangshu smiled. He was not surprised. Our divine firmament soul sect does have 2 quotas. However, we do not intend to participate in Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial. Oh, after all, Hongwu Shengzhen is one of the 4 Shengzhen. Isn't your divine firmament soul sect tempted? Zhuowen smiled. Yangshu said proudly, "Hongwu Shengzhen's foundation and power are indeed not something my divine firmament soul sect can compare to. In terms of soul cultivation, Hongwu Shengzhen might not be much better than the divine firmament soul sect." Hearing this, Zhuowen secretly nodded. Yangshu's words were not without reason. In the divine firmament soul sect's visualization tower, there were many secret manuals that even the 4 Shengzhen might not be able to compare to. After all, in the visualization tower, there were even visualization diagrams that surpassed the heaven-shattering tier. Although they were damaged, that was still very impressive. In addition, the divine firmament soul sect mainly cultivated the soul. Even if they joined Hongwu Shengzhen, it would probably not be of much help in terms of soul cultivation. Sect Master, he is right. Your sect's cultivation standards are more unorthodox. The 4 Shengzhen really might not be able to give you more things. Zhuowen nodded. However, there are only 4 months left until Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial. If you are interested, you can go and watch the battle. In the Liyuan main region, including many states, our Wukong state can only be considered as above average. In the trial, some extremely outstanding monstrous geniuses will definitely appear. We can watch a good show. Yangshu chuckled. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "I was just casually mentioning it. I really don't care about a trial of this level." Yangshu and the others were all in awe when they heard this. They did not feel that Zhuowen was exaggerating. In their eyes, Zhuowen was undoubtedly a genius of the Heavenly Demon Clan. Therefore, it was very normal for him to say such words. "That's true. Who is our young friend Daowen? Naturally, he won't be interested in such a trial." Yangshu rubbed his hands as he spoke and continued, "Young friend Daowen, I once heard that the 3 devil clans of the Liyuan main region have unique methods of cultivating the soul. If I may be so bold as to ask you to demonstrate your celestial demon clan's method of cultivating the soul for me," Jianchen said with a smile. At this point, He Yangshu's eyes revealed a fanatical look. His soul had been stuck at the heaven-crushing 7 transformations for too long. Even if he crazily comprehended the demonic essence transformations diagram and the supreme Xiantian diagram, it was still useless. He knew that if he wanted to continue breaking through, he had to absorb more visualization diagrams. Only then could he verify his own Tao of the soul and find out what his flaws were. Zhuowen was stunned at first, but he quickly reacted. It seemed that He Yangshu had mistaken him for a member of the so-called Heavenly Demon Clan. However, he knew nothing about the Heavenly Demon Clan. He had never even heard of it. However, looking at He Yangshu's attitude, Zhuowen acutely sensed that the 3 demon clans didn't seem to be much weaker than the 4 Shenzhen clans. They might even be stronger. Seeing that Zhuowen had fallen silent, He Yangshu hurriedly said, "Daowen, don't misunderstand. I'm just suggesting. You don't have to take it to heart. If it's inconvenient, it doesn't matter. However, if you're willing to show me the soul cultivation method, you can choose any one of the visualization diagrams in the visualization tower as a sign of my sincerity." Zhuowen took another look at He Yangshu. He didn't expect He Yangshu to be so willing to spend so much money. The most valuable things in the visualization tower were the demonic essence transformations diagram and the supreme Xiantian diagram. If he really agreed, he would definitely choose one of these 2 books. No matter which one it was, if he took it away, it would be a great loss to the Divine Firmament Soul Sect. Qin Ruebua, the 5th elder, and the 6th elder's expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly signaled to He Yangshu with their eyes. Unfortunately, He Yangshu didn't pay attention to them at all. Instead, he looked at Zhuowen with bright eyes. He knew that whether he could obtain the opportunity to break through depended on the youth in front of him. "Sect Master, I won't bully you. I agree to your conditions. If you can really comprehend something, I want to borrow the demonic essence transformations diagram in the visualization tower to study for a month. If you don't gain anything, I won't take anything from your Divine Firmament Soul Sect," Zhuowen said indifferently. He Yangshu was stunned for a moment before revealing an excited expression. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be so easy to talk to. "Thank you, Brother Daowen." He Yangshu bowed deeply to Zhuowen. This was his sincere gratitude. Qin Ruebua and the 2 elders looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of admiration. He was clearly a genius from a large faction, but he could still be so approachable. There weren't many people like him in the 100 regions. "Follow me to the square outside, the main hall." As Zhuowen spoke, he took a step forward and landed in the center of the square outside. He Yangshu and the other 3 followed closely behind. They all stared at Zhuowen without blinking. Zhuowen wasn't a genius from the Heavenly Demon Clan, so he naturally didn't know the Heavenly Demon Clan's soul cultivation technique. However, He Yangshu probably hadn't seen a cultivator from the Heavenly Demon Clan before, so he definitely wouldn't be able to tell if Zhuowen used the soul cultivation technique. Zhuowen planned to use the primordial chaos visualization diagram. This visualization diagram was the strength of a large family and faintly surpassed the supreme Xiantian diagram. Chapter 38:61. Rumble! A purple-gold torrent shot out from between Zhuowen's brows and transformed into a purple-gold river that would never change. Zhuowen stepped onto the purple-gold river with his right foot. Zhuowen walked up step by step and ascended into the sky like a soaring cloud. A terrifying aura crushed down like a tidal wave and enveloped the entire Divine Firmament Soul Sect. Bam, bam, bam. Qin Ruebua, the 5th elder, and the 6th elder's expressions changed drastically. Their bodies trembled as they knelt on the ground. The aura of this purple gold river was too terrifying. It suppressed their souls to the point that they were constantly scrambling around. Upon closer inspection, cherry red blood flowed out from between their brows. This was a sign that their souls had been injured. Yangshu stood in the same spot, but from his slightly trembling shoulders, it was clear that Yangshu was also slightly affected. Although Zhuowen's soul had just broken through to the heaven-crushing 6 transformations, the primordial chaos visualization diagram that he cultivated had surpassed the demonic qi transformation diagram and the supreme Xiantian diagram in the visualization tower. In addition, the power of his soul was also extremely extraordinary. Therefore, even though Yangshu's soul cultivation was a whole major realm higher than Zhuowen's, he was still affected by Zhuowen's soul. So powerful! Qin Ruebua, the 5th elder, and the 6th elder supported each other with difficulty and sat cross-legged on the side. They began to circulate their soul power together and barely managed to withstand the purple gold river's aura. Yangshu stared fixedly at the purple gold river, and the more he looked, the more enlightened he became. When Zhuowen stepped on the purple gold river and landed on the ground again, Yangshu had already closed his eyes and entered a state of enlightenment. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and the purple gold river surged and returned to between his brows. Qin Ruebua and the other 2 sighed lightly as the pressure on their bodies instantly disappeared. They stood up and walked to Zhuowen's side with reverence. Your sect leader should have gained some enlightenment. Then I have not failed my mission, Zhuowen said with a faint smile. Daowen, you really are the successor of the celestial demon clan after all. Your method of cultivating the soul is just too profound. It's probably even greater than the demonic energy demonification diagram. Qin Ruebua raised his thumb in admiration. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, Sect Master, his epiphany might require some time. It just so happens that I'm free during this period of time. Can Brother Qin open the visualization tower for me again? Qin Ruebua exchanged glances with the 5th and 6th elders, and then he nodded and said, Since it's Brother Daowen's request, then it's naturally not a problem. Thus, Zhuowen took the visualization tower's doorplate and entered the tower again. Apart from the demonic energy demonification diagram, Zhuowen had basically comprehended all the other diagrams in the visualization tower. He had entered this time to comprehend the demonic energy demonification diagram as well and fuse it into the primordial chaos visualization diagram. 5 days later, Zhuowen opened the door to the visualization tower once more. He discovered that Yangshu was still standing where he was while Qin Ruebua and the other 2 were still waiting by his side. Sect Master, he still hasn't woken up? Zhuowen was rather puzzled. He glanced at Yangshu before asking Qin Ruebua. Qin Ruebua smiled bitterly. He also felt that Yangshu's epiphany had taken a little too long. It had already been 5 days. Brother Daowen, the sect master promised you that you could comprehend the demonic energy demonification diagram in the visualization tower for a month. Why have you come out now? Qin Ruebua asked in surprise. Because I've completely comprehended the demonic energy demonification diagram. Zhuowen said calmly, I see. What? You've comprehended the demonic energy demonification diagram. Qin Ruebua immediately jumped up and looked at Zhuowen as if he had seen a ghost. Yeah. Why? Is there a problem? Zhuowen shook his head and said, helplessly. Qin Ruebua immediately stuttered. Brother Daowen, then to what extent have you cultivated it to? Zhuowen thought for a moment and said, I've probably cultivated it to the lesser success stage. However, I've already figured out the circulation route of the demonic energy demonification diagram. As long as I cultivate according to that circulation route, I'll be able to reach the greater success stage soon. Qin Ruebua was about to go crazy. It had only been 5 days, and Zhuowen had already cultivated the demonic energy demonification diagram to the lesser success stage. Qin Ruibo recalled that when he cultivated the demonic energy demonification diagram, it had taken him nearly 100 years to cultivate it to the lesser success stage. This was already considered the shortest time among all the experts in the Divine Firmament Soul sect who had cultivated this visualization diagram in the past. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be known as the strongest genius since the establishment of the Divine Firmament Soul sect. However, this youth in front of him was even more abnormal. He had achieved what he had needed 100 years to achieve in 5 days. This made Qin Ruibo feel as if he had lived like a dog all these years. I've already delayed in your sect for too long. I still have important matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving first. See you again. Zhuowen ignored the shocked expressions of Qin Ruibo and the two elders. Instead, he cupped his fists at them and took out the divine ship, vanishing on the spot. Not long after Zhuowen left, He Yangshu, who was originally standing motionlessly on the spot, slowly opened his eyes. His eyes burst forth with a light that could not be looked at directly, and then a blazing light surged between his brows. This light rushed out from between his brows and shot straight into the sky. Instantly, the entire sky seemed to be pierced through by this beam of light. An incomparably vast and terrifying pressure crushed down from this beam of light, causing Qin Ruibo and the other two to involuntarily kneel on one knee on the ground. Sect Master has broken through. He has finally broken through. Qin Ruibo and the other two were not shocked but delighted, and their eyes were filled with excitement. The beam of light in the sky did not last for too long, dissipating into countless specks of light that surged into the depths of He Yangshu's brows in a flurry, and that terrifying pressure between heaven and earth also vanished like smoke in thin air. He Yangshu involuntarily roared with laughter. He laughed very freely, and tears gushed out from the corners of his eyes. His spirit had stagnated at the early stage of the shattering Heaven's seventh transformation for as long as tens of thousands of years. Finally, today he found the opportunity to breaking through to the middle stage of the shattering Heaven's seventh transformation. Moreover, after He Yangshu saw the spirit power that Zhuowen displayed, he seemed to have seen the path of spirit cultivation in the future. Zhuowen's spirit display was like opening the door to a new world for him, leading him to step into a new realm. He knew that before his spirit reached the shattering Heaven Eighth transformation, he would not have too great of a bottleneck anymore. Congratulations on breaking through, Sect Master. Qin Ruibo and the other two hurriedly went forward to congratulate. He Yangshu was in a great mood, and looking at Qin Ruibo, he said, "Ruibo, where's Brother Daowen? Quickly bring me to see him. It was all thanks to his help that I was able to break through this time. I have to personally thank him." Qin Ruibo's expression was not too natural, and he said slowly, "Brother Daowen just left not long ago." Chapter 38:62. Qin Ruibo smiled bitterly. Brother Daowen entered the visualization tower, but he came out 5 days later. He said that he had already cultivated the demonic origin demonic painting to lesser mastery and didn't need to stay any longer. He left just like that. He Yangshu's pupils constricted. He suspected that he had heard wrongly and repeated, "What did you say? Did I hear wrongly? You said that Brother Daowen only spent 5 days to cultivate the demonic origin demonic painting to lesser mastery? How is that possible?" Qin Ruibo said bitterly, "I don't believe it either, but Brother Daowen doesn't have to lie to me, right? After all, the visualization tower was open to him for a month, but he came out in 5 days. It's obviously not beneficial to him." He Yangshu fell silent. Qin Ruibo was right. Zhuowen had a month, but He came out in 5 days. This action was simply incomprehensible, unless it was really as Zhuowen said, that he had indeed cultivated the demonic painting to lesser mastery in 5 days. Yangshu took a deep breath and looked at the sky. He sighed. He's really a genius. In the future, this Daowen will shine brightly in the Liyuan main region and even the entire Heshu realm. He's going to become a hegemon who dominates a region. It's a pity that we no longer have any ties with him. Qin Ruebua and the other two nodded in agreement. As long as Zhuowen didn't die midway, he would definitely be a top-notch expert in the future. After Zhuowen left the Divine Firmament Soul Sect, he headed straight for Evil King Island. There were only 4 months left until Hongwu Shengzhen's entrance trial. He was prepared to enter seclusion during these 4 months, hoping to increase his cultivation level. After all, he still had many chaos crystals on him, enough to increase his cultivation level by 1 or 2 minor realms. When Zhuowen was about to reach Evil King Island, the disguise on his face completely faded, and he returned to his original appearance. Evil King Island was still shrouded in black clouds all year round. From afar, it looked like a black pillar that pierced the sky. When Zhuowen was about to reach the shore of Evil King Island, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. A strong sense of danger assaulted his heart. Whoosh, whoosh. Just as the sense of crisis welled up in his heart, 3 terrifying attacks suddenly swept over from 3 different directions and blasted onto Zhuowen's divine ship. Boom, boom. The divine ship exploded with a loud bang, setting off a terrifying wave of fire. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. The moment the divine ship exploded, he turned into a purple ghostly figure and left the divine ship, landing on the shore of Evil King Island. He raised his head and looked at the 3 middle-aged men floating in the air in front of him. His expression did not look too good. This was because he recognized the 3 middle-aged men's robes. They were the robes of the Hong martial divine sect's elders. Furthermore, the cultivation of these 3 people was not weak. They were all at the early stage of the yin-yang transformation realm. This Zhuowen has indeed returned to Evil King Island. I really didn't expect that we didn't wait in vain. A tall and sturdy middle-aged man looked coldly at Zhuo when as a cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. With the middle-aged man as the leader, the 3 of them quickly surrounded Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression was ugly. The 3 of them were only at the early stage of the yin-yang transformation realm. Zhuowen was not afraid of them. What he was puzzled about was how the Hong martial divine sect knew that he was on Evil King Island. How did you know my whereabouts? Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he asked. You don't have to ask. Obediently surrender and follow us back to the Hong martial divine sect. You should know that with your cultivation, you are no match for us. The burly man said with disdain. Let me ask you again. How did you know my whereabouts? Zhuowen roared in a low voice. His voice carried blazing killing intent. The burly man was instantly frightened by the killing intent in Lin Fan's eyes and could not help but take a few steps back. However, he felt that it was a little embarrassing and took a few steps forward. He said fiercely, a mere empty god transformation. Realm ant dares to shout in front of me. You are courting death. With that, the burly man took the initiative to attack. His right palm blasted out, and instantly 9 palm prints surged out. Every palm print was as vast as a mountain and had a terrifying aura. It crushed towards Zhuowen. The other 2 men looked calm and did not have any intention of attacking. In their eyes, a mere empty god transformation realm ant was not qualified for the 3 of them to join forces. If it was not for Sikong Chiyu's orders, they would not even bother to follow. Only the burly man alone would be enough. The 9 palm prints were extremely fast. They landed on Zhuo Wen's body in unison, causing 9 deafening explosions to erupt. The burly man stood in his original position. His eyes revealed a trace of coldness and arrogance. In his eyes, Zhuo was already a dead man. He did not even look at him. Just as the burly man's gaze landed on where Zhuo Wen was, a strong sense of danger engulfed his mind. Boom! There was a deafening explosion that reverberated in the burly man's ears. By the time he reacted, he saw a huge fist smashing into the space between his eyebrows. Puchi! The burly man flew out in a sorry state. Blood spurted out from between his eyebrows. A strange purple-gold energy surged into the depths of his eyebrows like maggots. The burly man covered his eyebrows and let out a shrill scream. He kept rolling on the ground and screamed at the top of his lungs. He was like a prisoner who had been tortured hundreds of times. The 2 early-stage yin-yang transformation realm cultivators who had stopped not far away were shocked. They looked at Zhuo and the burly man in disbelief. Zhuo's eyes were cold. He looked coldly at the other 2 cultivators. The killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed. All of you can die as well. Zhuo roared. It was like the roar of an injured beast. It was low and shocking. Kill him. The eyes of the 2 cultivators also erupted with piercing killing intent. As far as they were concerned, the only reason Zhuo Wen was able to injure the burly man was because the burly man had been careless, allowing Zhuo Wen to take advantage of the situation. Zhuo Wen summoned 9 void spirits and stood in front of the 2 cultivators, blocking them. At the same time, he pointed his sword finger at his eyebrows. A purple-gold light surged out from the depths of his eyebrows. The golden light was extremely hot. As it surged, it turned into 2 large purple-gold swords. The moment the 2 large purple-gold swords flew out, the surrounding sword chi rushed into the sky as if it was going to cut the sky open. The 2 cultivators had just broken through Zhuo's 9 virtual spirits when they felt the terrifying purple-gold sword chi. Their expressions changed drastically. They actually felt the chilling aura of death from the 2 large purple-gold swords. Swoosh! Under Zhuo Wen's cold gaze, 2 purplish-gold swords sliced through the air, dragging long tails of light as they slashed towards the 2 cultivators. Before the 2 cultivators could react, the large purple-gold swords pierced through their eyebrows. Chapter 38:63. When Zhuo took out the purple-gold sword and killed the 2 early-stage yin-yang transformation cultivators, the burly man came to his senses. He was stunned by the scene before him. Since Zhuo Wen's soul had advanced to the 6th form of the heaven-crushing realm and cultivated the primordial visualization diagram that gathered the strengths of the great clans, the might of the soul sword insight he executed had completely undergone a terrifying transformation. The sword shape condensed from the soul sword essence also changed from the form of burning green lotus flames to the current appearance of a purple-gold sword. Moreover, its power was extremely terrifying. Ordinary yin-yang transformation cultivators would find it difficult to resist the might of the purple-gold sword. He deliberately used 2 soul sword intents to kill the 2 early-stage yin-yang transformation cultivators. He was not surprised at all. Instead, he felt that it was only natural. Zhuo ignored the burly man's shock. He took a step forward and grabbed the burly man with his right hand. Then he used his movement technique and rushed towards the depths of Evil King Island. After a while, Zhuo arrived at the depths of Evil King Island. It was the entrance to the Central Valley, where the Hong Sect's new base was located. Prado, who was originally tied up at the entrance, was nowhere to be seen. The Central Valley was filled with evil spirits. Only the slovenly Taoist, Daokong, and Dokyo were absent. Where are the 3 people in this valley? Zhuowen grabbed the burly man's collar and asked coldly. The burly man was already scared out of his wits by Zhuowen. After Zhuowen interrogated him a little, he confessed. Zhuowen patiently listened to the burly man. However, the more he listened, the more furious he became. It was as if he wanted to burn the burly man alive. It turned out that the location of Evil King Island was leaked because a disciple of the Hong Martial Divine Sect happened to pass by Evil King Island and saw Dao Kong, who was cultivating on the shore of Evil King Island. Originally, he did not pay much attention to a little boy like Dao Kong. However, the more he looked at it, the more familiar it seemed. Then, he recalled the arrest warrant issued by the Hong Martial Divine Sect some time ago. Out of the 4 people on the wanted posters, there were 2 little Taoist children, and one of the little Taoist children looked exactly the same as the little Taoist children on the shore of Evil King Island. The Hong Martial Divine Sect disciple immediately realized that he had found the wanted criminal of the sect. Thinking about the generous rewards from the sect, his eyes burned with passion as he rushed to the shore. After knocking out Dao Kong, he carried Dao Kong away from the Evil King Island and returned to the Hong Martial Divine Sect. After Dao Kong was brought back to the Hong Martial God Sect, he immediately attracted the attention of the sect's upper echelons. They all knew that Dao Kong was a member of the Hong sect. Originally, they were not interested in the Hong sect, which had been in decline for a long time. However, this member of the Hong sect was, after all, a hidden danger. Therefore, Shi Shenhong sent an elder and a disciple to the Hong sect to silence them to prevent future trouble. However, that elder and disciple did not return. When the Hong Martial Divine Sect sent people to the Hong sect's ruins, they only saw 2 corpses and empty ruins. That elder and disciple were killed, and it was highly likely that they were killed by the Hong sect's remaining members. This immediately attracted the attention of the sect's upper echelons, and they even issued an arrest warrant. Now that they had captured one of the Hong sect's remaining members, they could interrogate him and get him to confess the whereabouts of the other members. Even though Dao Kong was young, he had a backbone. No matter how they interrogated him, he would rather die than say a single word. In the end, Dao Kong angered the elder in charge of the interrogation. That elder immediately used a soul-searching technique on Dao Kong and obtained Dao Kong's memories. As for Dao Kong, because of the terrifying aftereffects of the soul-searching technique, he eventually turned into an idiot. The interrogation elder obtained the information he wanted and handed it over to Sikong Chiyu. Sikong Chiyu immediately brought several elders to the Evil King Island and captured the slovenly Taoist and Dokyo. Especially when Sikong Chiyu saw that the person he wanted to capture was the slovenly Taoist, he was extremely shocked. After all, when they were ambushed by Prado, the slovenly Taoist showed his might and saved them all. Of course, Sikong Chiyu naturally saw Prado tied up at the entrance of the valley in the center of the Evil King Island. However, when Sikong Chiyu remembered the Hong sect situation, he made a move to test the slovenly Taoist. After that, he found that the slovenly Taoist was unable to withstand a single blow. Hence, he made a move to capture the slovenly Taoist and brought him back to the Hong Martial Divine Sect. From Dao Kong's memories, they already knew about Zhuowen's existence. They also knew that Zhuowen had left the Evil King Island for the Central Province. Hence, Sikong Chiyu sent 3 elders in the early stage of the Yin-Yang transformation realm to wait for him on the Evil King Island. And as Sikong Chiyu expected, Zhuowen had indeed returned to the Evil King Island and had run into these 3 elders. But in the end, the 3 early Yin-Yang change elders were easily defeated by Zhuowen. When did Sikong Chiyu take them away? Zhuowen asked with a gloomy face. 3 days ago. They should be locked up in the prison of the Hong Martial Divine Sect's Law Enforcement Hall. The tall, and sturdy man said with a terrified expression, "How do you plan to deal with them?" Zhuowen asked coldly, "I am not sure about this." The tall and sturdy man lowered his head, not daring to look at Zhuowen. "Do you plan to kill them? Or do you plan to get rid of them together after capturing me?" Zhuowen said eerily. The tall and sturdy man felt Zhuowen's biting cold killing intent and quickly shook his head. "Calm down. Sect Master will not kill Hong Shenwu and the rest for now, because Hong Shenwu still has a lot of value." "What do you mean?" Zhuowen frowned and asked. "Hong Shenwu has already confessed that he cultivated the incomplete version of the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra. Before obtaining the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra from Hong Shenwu, Sect Master will not make a move against Hong Shenwu." The tall and sturdy man's voice was very hurried, as if he was afraid of missing something. He continued, "So you better not kill me. If you kill me, you will only enrage Sect Master. At that time, Hong Shenwu and the rest will not be able to keep their lives." Zhuowen sneered and said, "You already said that whether Hong Shenwu can live or not depends on when he confesses the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra. Who do you think you are? How can your life be compared to Hong Shenwu's?" The tall and sturdy man's complexion became deathly pale. He suddenly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Zhuowen. "Please spare my life, I beg you." Zhuowen silently looked down at the tall and sturdy man and suddenly said, "I can spare your life, but you must do something for me." "What is it?" the tall and sturdy man said emotionally. Chapter 38:64. Zhuowen stepped on the burly man's spine and stomped him to the ground. He said coldly, "If you don't do it, you'll die now. If you do it, if you're lucky, you might be able to keep your life." The burly man laid on the ground with humiliation in his eyes. His heart was filled with mixed feelings, but in the end, he agreed to Zhuowen's condition. Swoosh! A ray of light streaked across the horizon and landed in front of the Hong Martial Divine, Sect's majestic mountain gate. When the light faded, a burly man appeared in front of the Hong Martial Divine Sect's mountain gate. "Greetings, Elder Jianzhong." The guards at the two sides of the mountain gate immediately cupped their hands and bowed when they saw the burly man. Their eyes were filled with respect. "Where's Elder Sikong?" Elder Jian Zhong's eyes flickered as he asked. One of the guards thought for a moment and said, "Elder Sikong should still be in the law enforcement hall. He has already instructed us that if Elder Jianzhong, Elder Puai, and Elder Lu return, we are to look for him in the law enforcement hall." As he spoke, the guard looked behind Elder Jianzhong and asked, "Where's Elder Puai and Elder Lu?" "The two of them are still on Evil King Island, so I came back first." "Elder Jian," Zhong said indifferently. The two guards did not think much of it and allowed Elder Jian Zhong to enter the mountain gate. Elder Jian Zhong walked up the stairs behind the mountain gate and entered the Hong Martial Divine Sect. The law enforcement hall of the Hong Martial Divine Sect was located on an independent mountain peak. This mountain peak was named the Law Enforcement Peak. The law enforcement hall on top of it was extremely vast. From afar, it looked like a huge palace. After Elder Jian Zhong arrived at the peak, he entered the law enforcement hall without any obstructions. At this moment, there were 5 people sitting in the law enforcement hall's huge hall. Sitting on the main seat was the Hong Martial Divine Sect's sect master, Shi Shunhong. Sikong Chiu sat next to Shi Shunhong, while the other 3 people sat on both sides. They were all elders with rather high status in the sect. The 5 of them were discussing something. When Elder Jian Zhong entered the hall, the 5 of them stopped talking. Shi Shunhong glanced at Elder Jian Zhong and nodded, "Jian Zhong, take a seat." Elder Jian Zhong didn't say anything and just sat there silently. "Where are Elder Puai and Elder Lu? Why didn't they come with you? Also, Didn't I tell you to go to the Evil King Road and wait for that Zhuowen? When Elder Jianzhong had just sat down, Sikong Chiyu frowned slightly and asked in a deep voice. Elder Jianzhong said awkwardly, Elder Pu Yi and Elder Lu are still waiting at Evil King Island. I had something to do at the last minute, so I came back first. Sikong Chiyu's brows furrowed slightly. He was somewhat uncomfortable with Elder Jianzhong disobeying his orders without permission. Just as he was about to berate a few words, Shunhong interjected. Sikong, you don't have to be so harsh. That Zhuowen is just a nameless pawn. Even an early yin-yang transformation stage elder can capture him. You're sending out 3 at once. You're truly making a big deal out of this. Even if Jianzhong leaves, the remaining Elder Puyi and Elder Lu can complete the mission perfectly. Sure, Shunhong said indifferently. Sikong Chiyu fell silent. Sure, Shunhong already said it to this extent. What else could he say? Furthermore, this Elder Jianzhong was originally a member of Shi Shunhong's faction. If he berated Elder Jianzhong in front of Shi Shunhong, it was clearly not giving Shi Shunhong face. Thinking up to here, Sikong Chiyu endured it and just said indifferently, don't do it again. Elder Jianzhong hurriedly cupped his hands towards Sikong Chiyu and said, Jianzhong understands. After that, Elder Jianzhong cupped his hands towards Shi Shunhong and said, Sect Master, Jianzhong may be presumptuous to ask, does Hong Shenwu really have the remnant copy of the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra on him? Mentioning the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra, Shi Shunhong's expression immediately became solemn. At first, I didn't believe it. After all, the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra was destroyed in front of Hongwu Shengzhen's many powerhouses back then. But Hong Shenwu personally displayed overwhelming righteous energy in front of me. Although I didn't cultivate the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra before, I can also recognize the aura of overwhelming righteous energy. What he displayed was indeed genuine, overwhelming righteous energy. Shi Shunhong said solemnly. The moment these words came out, inside the hall, everyone revealed visibly moved expressions. They all knew the value of the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. This was the #1 exorcism classic. Furthermore, even cultivators without exorcism talent themselves had the possibility of cultivating it too. As long as they cultivated this kind of classic, then they would not need to carry fluorites in the dark and could rely on exorcism power to dispel evil spirits, even refining evil spirits. Since the remnant copy is on him, why doesn't Sect Master kill him and seize his spirit ring? Elder Jianzhong asked. Shi Shunhong shook his head and said, Jianzhong, you're thinking too simply. That Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra remnant copy has already been utterly destroyed by him. Right now, that cultivation method is hidden in this old fellow's head. Can't use soul-searching art? Elder Jianzhong asked with furrowed brows. Shi Shunhong smiled coldly and said, memories obtained by soul-searching tend to be incomplete. If we soul-search that old fellow, what we obtain is an even more incomplete Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. How will we still cultivate it? Elder Jianzhong scratched his head and asked, then what do we do now? Looking at Hong Shenwu, that old fellow's appearance, I'm afraid that he'd rather die than say the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. Shi Shunhong smiled coldly and said, this old fellow is indeed stubborn, but he has a fatal weakness. It's shielding his shortcomings. He's very concerned about his 2 precious disciples. We just need to make a move on his 2 disciples. I don't believe that this old fellow won't cooperate. As he said, Shi Shunhong stood up and said to an old man on the left seat, Law enforcement elder, this matter will be left to you. It's best to fish out the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra from that old fellow as soon as possible. Let's go first. Shi Shunhong got up and prepared to leave the hall. Sikong Chiyu, and the rest also followed closely behind. Sect Master, I wish to stay behind and interrogate together with law enforcement elder. I also wish to share Sect Master's burden and quickly interrogate out the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra, Elder Jian Zhong suddenly said. Sure, Shenhong nodded his head and said indifferently, Since you wish to stay behind, then stay behind. Hope that you all don't disappoint me. Before long, there was only Elder Jian Zhong and law enforcement elder left in the hall. Jian Zhong, I didn't expect that you're suddenly so interested in interrogation. I remember that what you were most unwilling to come to in the past was this old man's law enforcement hall. What's with you today? Did you eat the wrong medicine? Law enforcement elder narrowed his eyes, sizing up Elder Jian Zhong. Elder Jian Zhong was slightly nervous but calmed down very quickly and said, Law enforcement elder, I'm naturally not interested in your law enforcement hall, but I'm interested in Hongshan with this old fellow. Furthermore, you also know that if I can help interrogate out the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra, Sect Master will regard me even more highly too. Chapter 38, 65. Clang. Patriarch of Law Enforcement came to the deep part of the main hall. He pressed his right palm on the wall on the left, and the place where his palm was pressed slowly caved in. Immediately after, a strange thumping sound came from below the wall. It was as if someone was walking quickly from below. It sounded particularly horrifying. Elder Jianzhong was surprised to see that below the wall, the ground about 4 square meters had caved in and separated from the middle, revealing a pitch-black tunnel. The dungeon of the law enforcement hall is really secretive. The entrance is hidden here. No one would have thought of it. Elder Jian Zhong murmured to himself. Patriarch of Law Enforcement said proudly, Of course, this tunnel was designed by me. There are 81 mechanisms hidden in the tunnel, and each mechanism is different. Even if an expert at the peak of the Yin-Yang realm accidentally activates the mechanism, he will die. Elder Jian Zhong frowned slightly, as if he was lost in thought. Patriarch of Law Enforcement didn't notice Elder Jian Zhong's strange look and continued, Jian Zhong, follow me. The mechanism in this tunnel is horrible. If there is no guide, the mechanism will be activated, and it will be terrible. Patriarch of Law Enforcement reminded Elder Jian Zhong several times, and then they entered the tunnel. Elder Jian Zhong followed closely behind Patriarch of Law Enforcement, imitating his steps. The tunnel was quite spacious. 4 or 5 people standing side by side in the tunnel would not feel crowded. On both sides of the tunnel, there were bright lights, and the whole tunnel was as bright as day. After a while, they walked out of the tunnel and came to a bronze gate that was 10 meters high. The surface of the bronze gate was covered with dense chains, which tightly bound the whole gate. Elder Jian Zhong noticed that there was a palm-shaped dent in the center of the bronze gate. Patriarch of Law Enforcement stretched out his right hand and put it on the dent. His palm fit perfectly with the dent. Crack, crack, crack. Inside the bronze gate, there was the sound of heavy chains sliding. Many chains on the surface of the gate seemed to be alive, moving to both sides and finally hiding in the darkness. After the chains disappeared, the bronze gate was freed and slowly opened to both sides. Behind the gate, there was a bluestone avenue that was wider than the tunnel. On both sides of the bluestone avenue, there were neatly arranged cages with iron fences. There were more or less prisoners in these cages. Elder Jian Zhong could see that after the bronze door opened, these prisoners did not even lift their eyelids. They were probably numb from being locked up for too long. Elder of Law Enforcement brought Elder Jian Zhong along the bluestone path and walked towards the depths. After about a quarter of an hour, the two of them arrived at the end of the bluestone path. There was a huge empty space there, and above the empty space there was a huge iron cage floating in the air. Upon closer inspection, the top of the iron cage was suspended in midair by a thick and pitch-black chain. There were 3 people locked up in the iron cage. The law enforcement patriarch waved his right hand. With a creaking sound, the black chains that were tied to the iron cage slowly sank down. Clang! The iron cage fell to the ground, and the 3 people in the cage were shocked. Elder Jian Zhong's gaze landed on the 3 people in the cage. He immediately recognized them. They were the slovenly Taoist Daokong and Dokyo. The slovenly Taoist's hands and feet were bound by a golden energy, and he could only lie in the cage miserably. Daokong was kneeling on the ground with a silly smile, and saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth. Dokyo hugged his knees helplessly, and his head was on his chest. His entire body was trembling. The law enforcement patriarch opened the side door of the cage and pulled the smiling Daokong out. Pain, pain, ha, ha. Daokong was in pain, but the silly smile on his face did not stop. What do you want? The slovenly Taoist's expression changed slightly. He struggled to crawl over and shouted at the law enforcement patriarch. The law enforcement patriarch sneered. He looked down at the slovenly Taoist and said, "Hong Shenwu, my patience is limited. Now, hurry up and tell me the cultivation method of Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra. If not, I'll kill your silly disciple." The slovenly Taoist was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He roared, "Why? You've already searched his soul, and Daokong is already delirious. Why can't you let him go?" The law enforcement patriarch shook his head and said coldly, "Hong Shenwu, look at the situation now. Don't you understand the situation? Remnants of the Hong sect should not be allowed to exist in this world. Furthermore, you remnants of the Hong sect dared to kill our Hong martial divine sect's elders, so all of you deserve to die. Now, as long as you tell us the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra, we might give you a quick death and not continue to torture you." The slovenly Taoist calmed down and said softly, "Let my 2 disciples go, and I'll give you the cultivation method of the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra." The law enforcement patriarch's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Let go of these 2 remnants who might become trouble for our Hong martial divine sect in the future? Hong Shenwu, you must be joking. Right now, you don't have any choice. If you're smart enough to tell us the truth, I'll let your 2 adorable disciples suffer less. Or else." As he said that, the law enforcement patriarch's eyes flashed coldly. Fine lightning bolts appeared in his palm as he squeezed Daokong's neck. Pain, pain, pain. Daokong struggled with all his might. His eyes were almost white, and he was foaming at the mouth. His voice was shrill. "No, let him go. I'll tell you," the slovenly Taoist lowered his head in pain. He finally gave in, not because of himself, but because of his disciples. Daokong, Daojing, and the others had very tragic backgrounds to begin with. They were abandoned children who were left to fend for themselves in a barren land. It was the slovenly Taoist who had picked them up and raised them. The slovenly Taoist had already treated Daokong and Dokyo as his own son. How could he bear to see Daokong being tortured like this? The law enforcement patriarch's lips curled into a victorious smile as he threw Daokong onto the ground. Daokong was still twitching on the ground. Fresh blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. "Save Daokong. He's dying." When the slovenly Taoist priest saw Daokong's appearance, his expression changed drastically, and he roared. The law enforcement patriarch was unmoved as he said indifferently, "Since you want to save your disciples, why aren't you writing the Heaven and Earth Haren Sutra?" Suddenly, the law enforcement patriarch noticed that Elder Jian Zhong, who had been standing beside him, suddenly walked to Dao Kong's side and carried him up. Chapter 3866. Elder Jian Zhong, do you know what you're doing? Elder of Law Enforcement's face darkened. He looked at Elder Jian Zhong coldly and suppressed his anger. Elder Jian Zhong gently put Dao Gong beside the slovenly Taoist. Then he turned to Elder of Law Enforcement and said with a wry smile, Elder of Law Enforcement, I'm sorry this time. Elder of Law Enforcement was confused and asked subconsciously, What do you mean? As soon as Patriarch of Law Enforcement finished his words, a strong sense of crisis swept over him. He only felt a gust of cold air flowing from his tailbone to the depths of his mind. Feeling this strong sense of danger, Elder of Law Enforcement retreated decisively. When Elder of Law Enforcement retreated, a vortex appeared in the space beside Elder Jian Zhong. Then a fierce purple-gold sword rushed out and attacked Elder of Law Enforcement. Bang! 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 The purple-gold sword slashed 3 times in front of Elder of Law Enforcement. Each slash carried a terrifying sword chi. The surrounding ground and walls all burst open. The clanging sound of swords hitting each other could be heard in the air. Bang! After the last explosion, Elder of Law Enforcement managed to stop himself. He felt a sweet taste and spat out a mouthful of blood. Who are you? Elder of Law Enforcement looked up and was shocked to see a young man in black standing beside Elder Jian Zhong. Just now, this man suddenly appeared from the void and slashed out a purple-gold sword. The purple-gold sword was very strange. When it fell on him, it cut into his spirit. The terrifying sword essence seemed to be able to cut his spirit at any time. Now, there was still a terrifying sword essence left in his spirit. If he had not resisted it with all his might, he would have been killed. The middle stage of yin-yang change, you actually blocked my sword essence of spirit. The young man in black's eyes were cold and full of undisguised killing intent. His voice was as cold as a knife. Then he stepped forward and walked toward Elder of Law Enforcement. Who are you? Elder of Law Enforcement's eyes were full of fear, and he could not help retreating. He was too afraid of the purple gold sword. If he had not reacted in time, he would have been a dead man. Zhuowen, the black-clothed young man, softly spat out these 2 words. However, it caused the pupils of the law enforcement elder to shrink until they turned into needles. It's actually you, Elder of Law Enforcement screamed. He then looked at Elder Jian Zhong and said angrily, Elder Jian Zhong, you traitor! You actually brought a wanted criminal into the law enforcement hall's dungeon. You are playing with fire. Inside the iron cage, Elder Jian Zhong smiled bitterly. What could he do? At that time, he only had this one choice. If he didn't agree to Zhuowen's conditions, he would already be a dead man. So long-winded. You should just go to hell. Zhuowen noticed that the law enforcement patriarch was about to send a message. He stepped out with his right foot and turned into an illusory purple shadow, appearing beside the law enforcement patriarch in an instant. He took out a purple gold sword from between his eyebrows with his right hand and slashed it down, cutting off Patriarch of Law Enforcement's right hand that was about to send a message. The law enforcement elder screamed miserably. He was terrified. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be so strong. Die. Zhuowen didn't give the law enforcement elder any chance. He took out another spiritual soul sword essence. 2 spiritual soul sword essences, one from the front and one from the back, surrounded the law enforcement elder and completely pierced through him. With a plop, the law enforcement elder fell to the ground with blood all over his body. He didn't move an inch. Elder Jian Zhong looked at the law enforcement elder on the ground, and his legs couldn't help but tremble. He looked at Zhuowen with fear and respect. The law enforcement elder was a middle-stage yin-yang transformation expert, after all. Yet, he was easily dealt with by Zhuowen. Elder Jianzhong was really starting to doubt whether Zhuowen was really a nihility god transformation stage cultivator. Was he pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? After the law enforcement elder was defeated by Zhuowen, many of the prisoners in the surrounding cages were alarmed. They all looked at the law enforcement elder, who had fallen to the ground, and were all shocked. They didn't expect that there would be someone who dared to cause trouble in the prison of the law enforcement hall of the Hong Martial Divine Sect. Moreover, he killed the law enforcement elder. This was too cruel. They looked at Zhuowen's back, and their eyes were filled with hope. They all hoped that Zhuowen would be able to save them. Unfortunately, they were disappointed to find that Zhuowen did not even look at them. Instead, he walked straight to the iron cage in the deepest part of the cave. No one dared to make a sound. This was a ruthless person who dared to kill the law enforcement elder. They didn't dare to say anything. If they were killed, it would be too late to cry. Senior brother Daowen, Senior brother Daowen. When Dokyo heard the commotion, he raised his head. His eyes were red and tears flowed down his cheeks. He threw himself into Zhuowen's arms. Zhuowen gently picked up Dao Jing and looked at the little Taoist boy who was crying in his arms. A sense of guilt rose in his heart. Senior, brother, Daowen. Daokong had already woken up. He tilted his head and looked at Zhuowen. He repeated Dokyo's words. Then he laughed foolishly and clapped his hands. Senior brother Daowen, Daokong, he doesn't recognize me, and my master, Dokyo sobbed. At this moment, the shackles on the slovenly Taoist had been released by Elder Jianzhong. He stood up and looked at Zhuowen with a complicated gaze. Finally, he bowed deeply to Zhuowen and said, Daowen, thank you for risking your life to save the three of us. The slovenly Taoist knew that Zhuowen didn't have to care about them. After all, the Hong Martial Divine Sect was too dangerous. With Zhuowen's strength, it was too risky to save them. The sloppy Taoist didn't even hope that Zhuowen would come back to save them. As long as Zhuowen could escape from the Hong Martial God Sect's bounty and take revenge for them in the future, he would be satisfied. However, Zhuowen didn't. Instead, he risked his life to save them. At this moment, the slovenly Taoist's view of Zhuowen had changed. I'm also a member of the Hong sect. I can't just ignore you guys. Zhuowen said seriously. Good. The slovenly Taoist smiled. Sect leader, we can't stay here any longer. Let's leave first. Zhuowen said solemnly. The slovenly Taoist nodded. Under Zhuowen's signal, they entered Zhuowen's great world. Elder Jianzhong, bring us out of the Hong Martial Divine Sect. After this, I will return the soul imprint to you, and you will regain your freedom. Zhuowen said to Elder Jianzhong. Elder Jianzhong revealed a bitter smile. He knew that he was already on the same boat as Zhuowen. It was impossible for him not to help Zhuowen. Don't worry. Now that our fates are connected, I will definitely bring you out. Elder Jianzhong sighed. Zhuowen nodded. He waved his sleeve and entered the great world. Chapter 38:67. In the deep passageway, Elder Jianzhong followed the memory in his mind and slowly walked towards the top of the passageway. When Elder Jianzhong's feet landed at the entrance of the passageway, he let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally left the dungeon. Next, he only needed to leave the Hong Wu Divine Sect, and he would be completely safe. He silently closed the entrance of the passageway and walked out of the main hall. However, when he reached the entrance of the main hall, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His body trembled, and his eyes widened as he stared at the square in front of the main hall. A figure was slowly walking over. This figure clearly saw Elder Jianzhong, and with steady footsteps he arrived at the entrance of the main hall. Sect leader! Elder Jian Zhong secretly broke out in cold sweat, but he forced himself to calm down. He respectfully bowed to this figure and said, "Thank you." The figure that suddenly appeared in the square in front of the main hall was the sect leader of the Hong Wu divine sect, Shi Shenhong. "Jian Zhong, where's the enforcement elder? I'm looking for him." Shi Shenhong casually said. Elder Jian Zhong's face revealed a trace of hesitation as he said, "The enforcement elder is currently in the dungeon interrogating the remaining members of the Hong sect. I wonder why sect leader is looking for him." Shi Shenhong did not seem to notice the strange expression on Elder Jian Zhong's face as he said, "Seriously, doesn't Hong Shenwu have 2 disciples? One of them is already stupid and has no value. I plan to take the other one away." These 2 disciples of Hong Shenwu have cultivated a portion of the heaven and earth Howren scripture. If I search their souls, I might be able to piece together a portion of the heaven and earth Howren scripture's cultivation method. At this point, Shi Shenhong suspiciously said, "However, I sent a message to the enforcement elder, but he didn't reply to me. That's why I personally came to the enforcement hall to find him. Jian Zhong, why didn't you enter the dungeon with the enforcement elder?" Elder Jian Zhong was perturbed as he revealed a helpless smile. "The enforcement elder thinks that I don't know how to interrogate and that entering the dungeon would only be a hindrance. That's why he didn't let me in and went in alone to interrogate." Shi Shenhong shook his head and said, "The enforcement elder's temperament really hasn't changed after all these years, since he didn't reply to my message. I'm afraid he's at a crucial point in the interrogation. Otherwise, he would have replied to me. I'll go in and look for him now. Jian Zhong, do you want to come with me?" Shi Shenhong invited Elder Jian Zhong. Elder Jian Zhong shook his head and said, "Forget it. Since disciplinary elder doesn't want me to enter the dungeon, there is no need for me to force my way in." "In that case, you can go back first." Shi Shenhong nodded. After Elder Jian Zhong left, Shi Shenhong's eyelids twitched. For some reason, he felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Maybe he's a little crazy. Shi Shenhong shook his head and stepped into the main hall. He easily found the entrance to the dungeon and opened it. Shi Shenhong was, after all, the head of a sect. He had the authority to enter all the tunnels of the Hong Wu God sect. Shi Shenhong walked with mysterious steps, smoothly passing through the passageway full of traps, arriving at the bronze door at the end of the passageway. At this moment, the bronze door was wide open. Shi Shenhong was not surprised. The bronze door was the entrance to the dungeon. Since the law enforcement elder had come in first, it was impossible for the door to be closed. The moment Shi Shenhong passed through the bronze door, he immediately felt that something was wrong. This was because he discovered that there were many places in the cage behind the bronze gate that had caved in. Furthermore, he could feel intense energy ripples from these places. It was obvious that an intense battle had just taken place here. Shi Shenhong's expression changed slightly. He followed the green stone path and quickly entered the depths of the dungeon. Not far from the deepest part, he saw the corpse of the law enforcement elder lying on the ground. He briefly checked and knew that the law enforcement elder was dead. He also noticed that in the deepest part of the green stone path, there was an iron cage that had been placed down. However, there wasn't a single person in the iron cage. Hong Shenwu and the other 2 who were originally locked up in the iron cage had disappeared without a trace. "Who is it? How dare you make a move in my Hong Wu God Sect's dungeon? You're simply courting death." Shi Shenhong roared angrily. He came to the door of a cage and tore it open. He grabbed the prisoner inside the cage and held it in his hand. "Speak. What the hell is going on here? If you don't speak, you'll die immediately. Shi Shenhong roared. The prisoner trembled in fear. He naturally recognized Shi Shenhong's identity and knew that he was the #1 expert of the Hong Wu God sect. How could he dare to disobey the orders of such an expert? Trembling, he recounted everything that had happened in the dungeon. What? It's actually Jianzhong. Shi Shenhong revealed a look of disbelief. He once again recalled the unnatural expression on Elder Jianzhong's face when he met him. He immediately realized that this person might be right. Shi Shenhong casually threw the prisoner on the ground and rushed towards the entrance of the dungeon. At the same time, he issued an emergency signal to the upper echelons of the sect, ordering them to be on alert. After Shi Shenhong entered the dungeon, Elder Jianzhong knew that the matter would soon be exposed. Therefore, he hurriedly left this place and rushed towards the Hong Wu God sect's mountain gate. As long as he left the Hong Wu God sect, he could immediately use the divine ship to escape. At that time, he would have a chance to escape. Jianzhong, you're in such a hurry. Are you planning to leave the sect? When Jianzhong arrived at the stone steps in front of the mountain gate, a middle-aged man happened to be returning from outside the mountain gate. When he saw Jianzhong, he immediately went up to greet him. This middle-aged man was also an elder of the Hong Wu God sect. His cultivation was similar to Jianzhong's at the early stage of the yin-yang change realm. He had a good relationship with Jianzhong. At this moment, Jianzhong did not have the time to chat with this person. He casually brushed him off and hurriedly walked past him. Jianzhong, why are you in such a hurry? Did something happen? The middle-aged man noticed that Elder Jianzhong's expression was strange. He chased after him and asked with concern, I'm fine. I just wanted to go out and relax. Jianzhong said absent-mindedly. The middle-aged man felt that Jianzhong was a little strange. However, he did not think too much about it. Coincidentally, the communication jade talisman at his waist lit up. He stopped in his tracks and checked the communication jade talisman with his spiritual will. His body shook, and he immediately drew his divine sword and slashed at Jianzhong. Kacha! However, when the divine sword was about to reach Jianzhong's back, a purplish gold sword suddenly appeared behind Elder Jianzhong and cut the divine sword in half. The purplish gold sword did not lose its momentum and continued to slash at the middle-aged man. Chapter 38:68. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Zhuowen's voice could be heard. Then Zhuowen dashed out of the great world, grabbed the middle-aged man, and dashed towards the mountain gate. Although he was in the great world, his spiritual will had been observing the outside world. When he saw the middle-aged man immediately attack Elder Jianzhong after checking the communication jade amulet, he knew that they had been exposed. At the same time, his spiritual will sensed a terrifying aura within the Hong Wu divine sect. These auras were heading towards the mountain gate. It seemed like the experts of the Hong Wu divine sect were all alerted. Bang! Just as Zhuowen was about to leave the Hong sect, a strong ripple spread out from the Hong Wu divine sect. Then, like a huge light shield, it covered the entire mountain range of the Hong Wu divine sect. Zhuowen, on the other hand, crashed into the energy ripple that was like a protective barrier. His body was pushed back by the recoil. His feet stomped fiercely in the air as he involuntarily retreated dozens of steps. Every step he took created a terrifying shock wave that formed a boiling pillar of air under his feet. The two guards at the mountain gate stood behind the mountain gate in shock and anger. They didn't dare to fight with Zhuowen. They had seen with their own eyes how Zhuowen killed an elder in the early stage of the yin-yang transformation stage with a single slash. Wouldn't they be courting death if they went up? Furthermore, They recognized Zhuowen's identity. It was Zhuowen who was wanted by the Hong Wu divine sect. This is the sect protection array. It seems like the sect master has found out that the enforcement elder has been killed and has issued the highest level of martial law in the sect. Even the sect protection array has been activated. Elder Jian Zhong's face was as pale as a sheet. His body trembled as he continued. This is a heaven-breaking level 7 array. It's extremely powerful and terrifying. Zhuowen's face changed slightly. A heaven-breaking tier 7 formation was indeed a little scary. With his current strength, there was no way he could break through such a formation. Zhuowen, how dare you barge into the Hong Wu divine sect to kill someone? He's simply courting death. Elder Jianzhong, you are truly audacious. How dare you help a wanted criminal kill a fellow disciple? You traitor, you must die. Countless figures dashed out from the depths of the Hong martial divine sect. They were like a group of demons dancing in a frenzy, densely packed and numerous. Leading the group were more than 10 elders of the Hong Wu divine sect. They were the upper echelons of the sect and were at least in the middle stage of the yin-yang transformation stage. Some of them were even at the pinnacle of the yin-yang transformation stage. What surprised Zhuowen was that he didn't see Sikong Chiyu among these people. Elder Jian Zhong's face turned pale as he knelt on the ground. He muttered to himself, "It's over. We're all dead. There's no way we can escape." Zhuowen's gaze was serious. He did not care about Elder Jianzhong, who had lost his will to fight. Instead, he hovered in the air and looked at the dozens of figures in front of him, landing not far away from him. "Zhuowen, surrender now." The person leading the group was an old man with white hair and beard. His aura was the strongest among these people, and he should be at the pinnacle of the yin-yang transformation stage. According to Zhuowen's current strength, he might not be this old man's opponent. Zhuowen knew that he couldn't delay any longer. If Shi Shenhong came out, he wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Therefore, the moment these people appeared in front of him, Zhuowen decisively took out the 3-fire true mirror. Zhuowen's right hand gripped the copper mirror fragment tightly. A vast grand mist god force poured out from his body and entered the 3-fire true mirror. Instantly, the 3-fire true mirror emitted a terrifying pressure. Strange blood-red flames burst out from the copper mirror and gathered in the air. In a short while, the entire sky above the Hong martial divine sect was filled with a sea of blood-red flames. It was a strange and terrifying scene. The instant the blood-red flames filled the sky above the Hong martial divine sect, an extremely terrifying pressure fell on the entire Hong martial divine sect, as if gravity had multiplied by countless times. Many of the cultivators who were originally floating in the air immediately staggered and fell to the ground, causing many cracks to appear on the ground. Only the dozen or so yin-yang transformation stage cultivators were barely able to maintain their hovering position in the air. However, from their slightly trembling bodies, it could be seen that they were having a difficult time resisting the terrifying oppressive might. This is the 3-fire true mirror that was auctioned off by the World Auction House. It's actually on this kid. The old man leading the group looked at this scene in shock. His body trembled, and his heart was filled with fear. This was a grade 4 astral weapon fragment. Its strength was comparable to a god domain transformation stage expert's strength. Even if Zhuowen's cultivation wasn't enough and he couldn't display the full strength of a grade 4 astral weapon fragment, it was still terrifying. They might not be able to block it easily. Puchi. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale, but he still gritted his teeth and continued to channel energy into the 3-fire true mirror. On the other side, he was frantically absorbing the chaos crystals in the outside world to replenish the large amount of energy in his body. However, it didn't help. The energy he absorbed was much slower than the energy he released. This caused Zhuowen to become weaker. Bloodfire Mountain collapse. Zhuowen's gaze turned cold as he summoned the three-fire true mirror in his hand. Instantly, boundless blood-red flames swept over, forming an incomparably huge mountain. The surface of this mountain was burning with blood-red flames. It fell fiercely and covered the dozen or so upper echelons of the Hong Martial Divine Sect. The eyes of the peak yin-yang transformation stage, Old Man narrowed. He gathered all the energy in his body and barely resisted the terrifying pressure of the mountain. He flew back with difficulty, trying to escape the range of the Blood Mountain. Unfortunately, as soon as he left the range of the Blood Mountain, a purplish gold sword slashed at him from the strange void and slashed his back. The old man spat out a mouthful of blood and fell forward pathetically, falling into the range of the Blood Mountain. Zhuowen! He naturally knew that the one who attacked was Zhuowen. He almost cursed out loud. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to curse out loud as the Blood Mountain covered his entire body. Boom, boom, boom. The Blood Mountain smashed into the ground. Instantly, terrifying blood-red flames swept out in all directions. 2/5 of the territory of the Hong Martial Divine Sect was engulfed in the horrifying blood flame. Mountains and palaces were all destroyed. Not even ruins were left behind. The blood-red flames were too terrifying. They started to condense together, forming a blood pillar that pierced through the entire Hong Martial Divine Sect and into the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The Hong Martial Divine Sect protection array shone with a blazing light and blocked the blood pillar. However, it didn't last long. The sect protection array crumbled inch by inch, turning into dust. Chapter 38:69. The moment Shenhong flew out of the enforcement hall, he could feel the terrifying pressure released by the three-fire true mirror, following which his eyes turned red as he saw an incomparably huge blood mountain crashing down from the sky above the mountain gate. With a loud bang, the Blood Mountain landed within the sect, following which a flood of blood flames swept out like a ferocious beast, engulfing 2/5 of the sect. This blood flame was simply too terrifying. Everywhere it passed, everything was incinerated. Not even a blade of grass was left behind. As for the sect protecting array around the Hong Martial Divine Sect, it started to crumble and disappear under this attack. What made Shenhong even more devastated was that the 10 upper echelons of his Hong Wu Divine Sect were completely annihilated by this attack. These upper echelons were the backbone of the Hong Wu Divine Sect. Even the weakest amongst them was in the yin-yang transformation. Now that all of them were dead, the impact on the Hong Wu Divine Sect was simply too great. Zhuowen, I want you dead. I want you dead. I want you dead. Shenhong let out a beast-like roar. His voice was so loud that it shook the entire Hong Martial Divine Sect. It reverberated throughout the heavens and earth. A terrifying aura burst out from Shenhong's body. His figure was like lightning as he charged out. He stopped above the blood flames and looked at the boundless blood flames. Then he looked at Zhuowen, who had almost turned into a black dot and disappeared. He hesitated for a while, but in the end, he didn't chase after him. Instead, he used all his strength to extinguish the blood flames below him. This blood flame was emitted by the Grade 4 astral weapon, 3-Fire True Mirror. It had the characteristic of being indestructible. If this blood flame was allowed to continue wreaking havoc in the Hong Wu Divine Sect, it wouldn't be long before it spread to the entire Hong Wu Divine Sect. At that time, the Hong Wu divine sect would really be annihilated. At the same time that Shi Shenhong was extinguishing the blood flames, an equally powerful figure flew over from the depths of the mountain range not far from the sect. This figure was the Hong Wu divine sect's #2 expert, Sikong Chiyu. This is the blood flames of the three fire true mirror? Sect leader, what exactly happened? I just went out for a while. Why did such a thing happen inside the sect? Sikong Chiyu said, with immense shock. Shi Shenhong forcefully suppressed his rage and said to Sikong Chiyu, Sikong, all of this was done by that Zhuowen. Immediately chase after that Zhuowen. He had to bring him back. Otherwise, don't come back. Sikong Chiyu's pupils shrunk. She only felt that it was inconceivable. Zhuowen was only at the nihility god transformation stage. How did he obtain the three fire true mirror? Furthermore, with Zhuowen's cultivation, he simply did not have the ability to activate the power of a rank 4 astral soldier, like the three fire true mirror. However, that fella had done such a thing, and even destroyed 2/5 of the Hong martial divine sect. Sikong, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you chasing after that Zhuowen? Shi Shenhong's gaze darkened as he looked at Sikong Chiyu. His tone became extremely unfriendly. Sikong Chiyu frowned slightly. Although she was very unhappy with Shi Shenhong's attitude, the latter was still the sect leader of the Hong martial divine sect. She naturally could not disobey Shi Shenhong's orders. Since this kid can use the three fire true mirror, although his strength is nothing much, the three fire true mirror is too terrifying. Even I might not be able to block the attack of the three fire true mirror. Sikong Chiyu said worriedly, Don't worry. This kid's cultivation is too low. He must have paid a huge price to use the three fire true mirror. Furthermore, you only need to block them for a while. Shi Shenhong said coldly. Sikong Chiyu did not say anything else. She only nodded and flew towards the distant horizon. Shi Shenhong coldly looked at Sikong Chiyu's departing figure, then silently began to extinguish the blood flames in the surroundings. Although the blood flames covered a large area, Shi Shenhong's cultivation was extraordinary. He was even stronger than Sikong Chiyu, a mid-stage god domain transformation expert. Therefore, he did not need to use too much divine power to extinguish the blood flames. After Shi Shenhong extinguished the blood flames, he instructed a few elders to reorganize the sect. Then, with endless killing intent, he flew towards the distant horizon. This time, their Hong martial divine sect had suffered heavy losses. If he did not kill Zhuowen, he, Shi Shenhong, would not be worthy of being the sect leader of the Hong martial divine sect. Whoosh! In the vast horizon, a stream of light rapidly swept past. It was a huge divine ship. At this moment, on the deck of the divine ship, Zhuowen stood silently at the forefront. His eyes were solemn as he controlled the ship to move forward. In his hand was a bottle of medicine. Divine pills were poured into his mouth, turning into surging medicinal energy that spread throughout his body, healing his injuries. With a wave of his sleeve, he grabbed Elder Jian Zhong. At this moment, Elder Jian Zhong's body was still trembling. His eyes were filled with the emotions of being reborn. Jian Zhong, I'll return this spiritual imprint to you. Now that you're free, you can leave. Zhuowen said calmly as he took out Elder Jian Zhong's spiritual imprint from his spiritual imprint and inserted it into the latter's spiritual imprint. Elder Jian Zhong looked at Zhuowen with a complicated gaze. He did not expect Zhuowen to have such a powerful trump card. In one move, he killed more than 10 elders of the Hong martial divine sect and destroyed 2/5 of the sect. He began to doubt if this guy was really a void god transformation realm cultivator. Otherwise, how could he have such powerful means? Still not leaving? You won't be able to leave later. Zhuo coldly glanced at the slightly absent-minded Elder Jian Zhong and said expressionlessly, Elder Jian. Zhong came back to his senses and cupped his fists at Zhuo seriously. Then he left his divine ship and fled in another direction. He decided to leave the central region. From now on, he would never take half a step into the central region. Not long after Elder Jian Zhong left, Zhuo Wen's expression changed slightly. A faintly discernible sense of danger began to surface in his mind. He released a powerful spiritual force and started to scan behind him. Then his face turned gloomy. Hundreds of thousands of miles behind him, he discovered a figure rushing towards him. Moreover, this figure was getting faster and faster. The distance between them was rapidly shortening. In Zhuowen's spiritual force, he recognized the identity of this figure. It was Sikong Qiyu. In a short while, the wind and clouds above Zhuowen changed. An incomparably huge hand came crashing down on the divine ship. Zhuowen's reaction was extremely fast. The moment the hand came crashing down, he left the divine ship and retreated thousands of meters away. He watched as the divine ship was crushed by the huge hand. Chapter 3870. Zhuowen's gaze looked at Sikong Qiyu vigilantly. Just now, he used the 3-fire true mirror. Currently, his essence energy could be said to be greatly depleted. He could at most use the 3-fire true mirror one more time now. But this thing must catch Sikong Qiyu off guard before he could hit her, and it was impossible for Sikong Qiyu to stand in place foolishly and be beaten by him. Therefore, the current situation was very disadvantageous to him. Sikong Qiyu, do you still remember what you said to Miss Luo back then? Zhuowen was silent for a moment and suddenly opened his mouth. Sikong Qiyu was taken aback and looked at Zhuowen rather surprisedly and said with a cold smile, "What do you mean by this? Isn't my meaning clear enough? You and I joining hands have the possibility of killing Shi Shenhong. Isn't your goal to kill Shi Shenhong?" Zhuowen said coolly. Sikong Qiyu's brows furrowed slightly. The killing intent in his eyes became stronger and stronger, staring fixedly at Zhuowen. But Zhuowen turned a deaf ear to Sikong Qiyu's killing intent. Instead, he looked at Sikong Qiyu silently. He knew that Sikong Qiyu was conflicted and hesitant right now. Otherwise, Sikong Qiyu would have long made a move to take action against him. Zhuowen was not in a hurry. He looked at Sikong Qiyu and waited silently, waiting for Sikong Qiyu's final answer. Shi Shenhong carried a bellyful of rage and unleashed his movement technique with all his might, rushing forward explosively. It was only to see places that he passed through horrifying energy ripples spread out. The surrounding space was affected until it trembled violently, as if it would collapse at any time. Shi Shenhong virtually lost his reason, the fury in his chest continuously accumulating, wanting to completely vent it out at any time. Bang! 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 Only to see Shi Shenhong's figure sweep past a massive lake. Immediately, horrifying high waves surged on the lake's surface. The instant the high waves fell to the ground, the entire lake was collapsing. An unprecedentedly terrifying hole appeared. Furthermore, this hole was bottomless, akin to an abyss. It was pitch black, looking exceptionally terrifying and strange, while the lake water also poured into the abyss one after another. The naked eye could not see in the end where this lake water reached the abyss at all. Shi Shenhong seemed to have sensed something. The communication jade talisman at his waist lit up with a rather bright light. He slowed down a little and used his divine sense to check the message in the communication jade charm. After he finished reading, his face was filled with ecstasy. He sped up and mumbled to himself, "Zhuowen, you're dead meat." You're really dead. If I don't kill you today, I won't be the sect head of the Hong Martial Divine Sect, Shi Shenhong. Before long, Shi Shenhong arrived at a valley. This was precisely the place that Sikong Chiyu mentioned in the message she gave him. At that moment, on the empty ground in the middle of the valley, Sikong Chiyu was standing. Beside her feet was a figure that was in a sorry state. This figure was bound by a powerful force and could not move at all. It could only struggle. When Shi Shenhong saw this figure, he immediately recognized that it was Zhuowen. However, just as Shi Shenhong was about to take a step forward, he thought of something and suddenly stopped. He looked suspiciously at Sikong Chiyu and said, "Sikong, if I'm not mistaken, this kid has the 3-fire true mirror on him. That's a rank 4 astral weapon, yet it was actually captured by you so easily?" Sikong Chiyu smiled slightly and said, "Sect Master, this boy's cultivation is too low after all. He's only at the Void God transformation stage. He forcefully used a rank 4 astral weapon. Although he displayed great power, his foundation was injured because of this. He's already an arrow at the end of its flight. How can he be my opponent?" Hearing this, Shi Shenhong nodded in agreement. There was no loophole in Sikong Chiyu's statement. After he chased out, he also guessed so. However, Shi Shenhong still did not approach Sikong Chiyu. Instead, he spread out his right hand and said coldly, "Now, hand this person over to me." Although Sikong Chiyu was the second in command of the Hong Martial Divine Sect, Shi Shenhong had never trusted the former. Sikong Chiyu chuckled. She did not feel strange because of Shi Shenhong's lack of trust. Instead, she obediently lifted Zhuowen and threw him to Shi Shenhong. When Zhuowen was thrown over, Shi Shenhong let out a sigh of relief and relaxed his vigilance. The killing intent and fury in his eyes were incomparably cold as they shot out. This boy actually dared to break into the law enforcement hall's dungeon, kill more than a dozen of his Hong Martial Divine Sect's higher-ups, and destroy a large portion of the sect's territory. This was simply an unforgivable crime. He must kill this boy. However, the instant Zhuowen's figure approached, a strong sense of danger arose in Shi Shenhong's heart. Then he felt a terrifying pressure enveloping his body, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Moreover, a large amount of sweat flowed out and rustled down. Divine Realm? Shi Shenhong immediately reacted. He knew that this was the power of the Divine Realm. Rumble! At the same time, a terrifying fist light blasted out from behind him, ruthlessly smashing towards the back of his head. Shi Shenhong could not be bothered with Zhuowen in front of him. He subconsciously thought that this Zhuowen was completely restrained and could not pose any threat to him. He suddenly turned around and punched behind him. 2 fists collided. Instantly, terrifying ripples rose in the surroundings. Moreover, a series of firecracker-like explosions resounded. Then, Shi Shenhong saw Sikong Chiyu's expressionless face. "Sikong Chiyu, you have big guts, actually daring to make a move against me. Are you trying to rebel?" Shi Shenhong was both shocked and furious. He really did not expect Sikong Chiyu to actually make a move, so he was not on guard. This was a hasty counterattack. However, Shi Shenhong was worthy of being a middle-stage divine realm transformation expert. He was even a minor realm higher than Sikong Chiyu. Even if he made a hasty counterattack, he still did not fall into a disadvantageous position, and was evenly matched with Sikong Chiyu. But Shi Shenhong soon discovered a trace of a mocking smile at the corners of Sikong Chiyu's mouth. He was first stunned, then immediately felt a swift and fierce sword intent surge out from behind him. Not good. Shi Shenhong's expression changed greatly. He had yet to turn around when a series of purplish-gold great swords already slashed over, blasting into the depths of his forehead. A total of 49 purplish gold greatswords slammed into Shi Shenhong's divine soul. Terrifying sword intent wreaked havoc and bombarded his divine soul without the slightest scruple, as if wanting to blow his entire divine soul into smithereens. Even if Shi Shenhong's divine soul had already reached shattering Heaven 7 transformations, being bombarded by 49 purplish gold greatswords still turned his divine soul into a complete mess. Sikong Chiyu, you actually dare to join forces with this, and you deserve to die. Shi Shenhong was enraged. He erupted with a powerful divine domain, instantly suppressing Sikong Chiyu's divine domain. At the same time, he smashed a fist over ruthlessly. Sikong Chiyu's expression changed slightly. She turned around and blasted out a punch. Then, she discovered to her horror that Shi Shenhong's offensive was seriously too terrifying. She suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood and retreated repeatedly. Chapter 3871. At this moment, Shi Shenhong wasn't feeling too good either. He had lost the initiative to begin with. Sikong Chiyu's sneak attack succeeded, and then Zhuowen's 49 purplish gold greatswords pierced into his divine soul. He had already suffered considerable internal injuries. Now, after forcefully unleashing his divine domain and forcing Sikong Chiyu back with a punch, he could feel a sense of weakness gradually surging into his heart. But soon his expression changed. He suddenly felt a terrifying pressure surging from the void behind him. He was all too familiar with this pressure. Wasn't it the pressure of the 3-fire true mirror that he felt in the Hong martial divine sect? This ant, he can actually use the 3-fire true mirror again. Shi Shenhong suddenly turned around. He saw Zhuowen's right hand tightly grasping a rather broken bronze mirror. But it was this inconspicuous bronze mirror that had annihilated almost all of the higher-ups in the Hong martial divine sect. Moreover, it had even destroyed 2/5 of the sect's territory. And, die! Shi Shenhong's killing intent soared. He could tell that Zhuowen needed a period of time to gather power to forcefully activate the 3-fire true mirror. And this period of time was enough for him to get close to Zhuowen and kill him. Therefore, Shi Shenhong attacked without hesitation. He punched out, and a terrifying fist imprint as vast as a mountain appeared in the sky. When the enormous fist imprint appeared and landed on Zhuowen's body, a figure blocked in front of Zhuowen and similarly punched out, blocking the fist imprint. The figure that blocked in front of Zhuowen was Sikong Chiyu. Zhuowen, use the 3-fire true mirror's power as much as you want. I'll block Shi Shenhong's attacks for you during this period of time. Sikong Chiyu said calmly. Zhuowen didn't say anything. Instead, he channeled the energy in his body into the 3-fire true mirror at an even faster speed. The terrifying blood flames became even more violent, shooting straight into the sky and igniting a boundless sea of blood flames. Sikong Chiyu, you still haven't realized your mistake? If you kneel in front of me and beg for mercy, perhaps I'll let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Shi Shenhong was both shocked and furious. This Sikong Chiyu was truly too despicable. She actually dared to obstruct him at this crucial moment. Sikong Chiyu sneered. She didn't answer Shi Shenhong's question. However, the movements of her hands became faster and more powerful. Her attacks became fiercer. Sikong Chiyu, why did you betray the Hong martial divine sect? When have I, Shi Shenhong, treated you? Shi Shenhong saw that he couldn't completely take down Sikong Chiyu in a short period of time. At the same time, he also felt that Zhuowen's aura was getting stronger and stronger. He almost roared in rage, but his heart was filled with doubts. Sikong Chiyu was the second in command of the Hong martial divine sect. Her position and authority were only below him. He still found it somewhat hard to believe that Sikong Chiyu would betray him. This was simply illogical. Sikong Chiyu did her best to resist Shi Shenhong's attacks. Suddenly, she opened her mouth and said, "Shi Shenhong, do you still remember the Si family?" Shi Shenhong was stunned and subconsciously muttered to himself, "Si family? Ho, you're really an eminent person with short memory. 10,000 years ago, the number one family in Central State, the Si family, could it be that you forgot?" Sikong Chiyu's eyes seethed with killing intent as he growled, "Amen. You're a remnant of the Si family? The Si family actually still has people alive." Shi Shenhong looked at Sikong Chiyu in surprise. But Sikong Chiyu smiled. It was just that his smile was filled with a piercingly cold intent. 10,000 years ago, the number one family in Central State, the Si family, had boundless glory. They were the true number one force in Central State in name. Even the Hong martial divine sect back then was somewhat inferior compared to the Si family. But on a certain night 10,000 years ago, a group of over a dozen experts entered the Si family and instantly killed the Si family's upper echelons and exterminated the entire Si family. And the Si family's number one expert, Si Shinyong, a middle-stage divine realm transformation mighty expert, actually died a violent death too. Sikong Chiyu's real name was Si Sa Tama. 1,000 years ago, he had once headed to the Li Yuan main region to train. But after he returned from training, what he saw were the Si family's ruins, as well as corpses buried in the ruins. Back then, Si Sa Tama knelt in the ruins and kowtowed heavily, swearing that he would definitely find the culprit and avenge the Si family. Then, he wiped his tears and left the Si family's ruins. After several hundred years of investigation, he finally found out the reason why the Si family was exterminated and the culprit. Back then, the one who exterminated the Si family was Hong Marshal Shengzhen's divine devil transformation expert. And the reason why Hong Marshal Shengzhen's experts moved out was because the Si family hid a clue regarding a rank 5-star soldier. A rank 5-star soldier was far superior to a rank 4-star soldier. It had almost never appeared in Central State. Even in the Li Yuan main region, a rank 5-star soldier was an extremely rare treasure. Although the Si family didn't possess a true rank 5-star soldier, just this clue alone was enough to bring about a calamity of extermination. Originally, this clue was the Si family's biggest secret and should have been kept very well. Outsiders shouldn't know about it at all. However, back then, the Si family's patriarch and Hong martial divine sect's patriarch, Shi Shenhong, were best friends. During a conversation, Si family's patriarch Si Shinyong accidentally revealed this clue and instructed Shi Shenhong to never reveal this information. Shi Shenhong naturally promised repeatedly, but when he returned to Hong martial divine sect, he immediately reported this matter to Hong Marshal Shengzhen's upper echelons. What happened next was naturally self-evident. Hong Marshal Shengzhen sent out experts at the divine devil transformation and exterminated the Si family in a single night. And because Shi Shenhong was meritorious for revealing this secret, he was rewarded with many cultivation resources. Originally, Shi Shenhong's aptitude wasn't particularly good, but because of these cultivation resources, his cultivation rose steadily over the past 10,000 years, and he jumped into the mid-stage god domain transformation. Moreover, he smoothly became the sect master of Hong martial divine sect. After Si Chiyu found out about this, he had already made up his mind to kill Shi Shenhong. Thus, he changed his name to Si Chiyu and smoothly entered Hong martial divine sect. Moreover, under continuous cultivation, his cultivation smoothly reached the early stage god domain transformation. However, Si Chiyu knew that his aptitude was limited. The early stage god domain transformation was already his limit. Unless he came across an unexpected opportunity, it would be difficult for him to advance. However, Shi Shenhong was different. He had made a great contribution and was rewarded with many resources and powerful divine artifacts by Hong Marshal Shengzhen. Unless his cultivation was stronger than Shi Shenhong, there was no way he could kill Shi Shenhong. Back then, he cooperated with Luo Lingyu because Luo Lingyu's aptitude was much better than his. He believed that Luo Lingyu would definitely surpass Shi Shenhong one day and kill him. Therefore, he proposed to cooperate and let Luo Lingyu go. But now, not only did Zhuowen obtain the 3-fire true mirror, but he also gained the recognition of the artifact spirit and could use the 3-fire true mirror's power. The 3-fire true mirror's power was much stronger than his. He believed that the 3-fire true mirror could heavily injure or even kill Shi Shenhong. Chapter 3872. Shi Shenhong, you must die today. Sikong Chiyu recalled the annihilated Sea clan, and her eyes became incomparably red. Her attacks became even fiercer. Shi Shenhong's complexion was not too good. Although he could feel the faintly discernible hostility from Sikong Chiyu towards him in the past, he had always thought that Sikong Chiyu was the successor of the Sea clan. But he had always thought that this was because Sikong Chiyu coveted his position as sect master. Although he was on guard, he didn't care too much about it, because as far as he was concerned, with Sikong Chiyu's natural talent and strength, once he stepped down from the position of sect master in the future, he would naturally pass the position of sect master to Sikong Chiyu. But what he didn't expect was that Sikong Chiyu revealing hostility towards him was entirely because of Sea Clan's matter. This was a situation of life and death. Sikong Chiyu, get out of my way. Shi Shenhong roared, but his heart was strong but not enough. His divine soul still retained the sword intent of the purple-gold greatsword. He was barely able to resist this sword intent and was unable to unleash all of his strength. Sikong Chiyu naturally also saw Shi Shenhong's decline. Her attacks became fiercer and fiercer, more and more terrifying. She very well carried out the principle of taking your life while you're down. Senior Sikong, get out of the way. Suddenly, Zhuowen's solemn voice came from behind Sikong Chiyu. Sikong Chiyu was overjoyed. She desperately used her strongest attack and broke away from Shi Shenhong's battle. Then she saw Zhuowen behind her, holding the Tri-Fire True Mirror in one hand. And above him, an endless sea of blood flames rapidly condensed into a blood mountain burning with raging blood flames. Zhuowen's gaze was cold and emotionless. His right hand formed a sword finger pointing to the horizon, and then suddenly swung down. The blood mountain in the sky fell down at a terrifying speed, leaving behind a bright blood trail in the air. Shi Shenhong's pupils shrank. He wanted to retreat, but no matter how he retreated, he was already locked on by the blood mountain's aura. So what if he retreated? The blood mountain speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it landed on Shi Shenhong's body. Immediately after, the terrifying blood flames exploded. The deafening explosion engulfed the surrounding several trillion miles. As for Zhuowen and Sikong Chiyu, the two of them had already left in advance. The valley below and the endless mountain range around the valley were all gradually annihilated, disappearing, and collapsing in the blood flames. In the end, the mountain range became a bottomless abyss. Above the abyss, endless bloody flames burned, as if they would never be extinguished. Puchi! Zhuowen suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his complexion was ghastly pale. He swiftly withdrew the Tri-Fire True Mirror and subconsciously distanced himself from Sikong Chiyu. Sikong Chiyu glanced indifferently at Zhuowen and said, "Zhuowen, don't worry. I, Sikong Chiyu, am not such a lowly person. It was all thanks to your help that I was able to kill Shi Shenhong. I can swear that I won't snatch the three-fire true mirror from you, and I owe you a favor." Zhuowen still looked at Sikong Qiyu vigilantly. He was not a newborn calf. Just based on Sikong Qiyu's words, he would not foolishly believe it. Sikong Qiyu did not care about the suspicious look in Zhuowen's eyes either. Instead, his gaze landed on that valley where Shi Shenhong was at. More accurately speaking, it was already not a valley now, but a bottomless abyss. Above this abyss, boundless bloody flames floated. He revealed a trace of relief. He truly could not sense Shi Shenhong's aura anymore. Under such a horrifying attack, Sikong Qiyu thought that this Shi Shenhong should not be able to survive either. But it was at this instant that Sikong Qiyu relaxed, that a strong, ominous feeling welled up in his heart. It was only to see a divine spear suddenly extend out of the void behind Sikong Qiyu, swiftly sweeping towards Sikong Qiyu's back. Sikong Qiyu's pupils constricted, but his reaction was extremely fast. The instant the divine spear swept over, his body immediately shifted to one side, dodging this sure-hit divine spear. But the divine spear's speed was too fast. Even though Sikong Qiyu avoided his vitals, he was still struck by this divine spear on his left shoulder blade. It was only to see fresh blood spurt out from his left shoulder blade. Sikong Qiyu gave a muffled groan and fell down from midair in a sorry state. When Sikong Qiyu barely managed to stabilize his figure in midair, the divine spear in the void vortex swept out completely, and what came out together with the divine spear was also a figure, Shi Shenhong. Sikong Qiyu's pupils constricted, only feeling incredulous as he stared fixedly at this man holding the divine spear. He was precisely Shi Shenhong. It was just that Shi Shenhong was currently in an extremely sorry state. The clothes on his entire body were utterly tattered. Even his hair was burned away by the bloody flames, becoming bald. "You're actually not dead." Sikong Qiyu looked at Shi Shenhong in disbelief. Under such a horrifying attack, apart from Shi Shenhong being a little wretched, he did not suffer too many injuries. Shi Shenhong grinned and said, "Sikong Qiyu, your understanding of me is still too little. Do you know what the divine spear in my hand is?" Only then did Sikong Qiyu's attention land on the divine spear in Shi Shenhong's hand. He sensed the berserk aura flowing out from inside the divine spear. His pupils constricted, and he said in a low voice, "This is a heaven-breaking rank 7 divine artifact." "Ha ha. Yes, this spear is called Limitless Space-Piercing Spear. It's connected to a certain dimensional space. The power of the three-fire true mirror is indeed very powerful. But I made use of this spear to enter the dimensional space and avoid that level of attack." Shi Shenhong's eyes became increasingly pleased with himself. His right hand suddenly waved. A horrifying spear intent swept out, turning into a violent gale, rumbling towards the Zhuowen not far away. Originally, Zhuowen planned on fleeing right away the instant Shi Shenhong appeared. Now, seeing Shi Shenhong's attack with his eyes, he knew that he could not leave anymore. His eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. He took out several purple-gold greatswords and slashed on top of this spear intent. Puchi! Zhuowen discovered to his shock that the purple-gold greatswords were easily minced by the spear intent. Then they landed directly on his body. His entire body blossomed with bright blood, and his entire person fell to the ground in a sorry state. And the instant Zhuowen landed on the ground, Shi Shenhong moved. He shot out like lightning. His target was shockingly Zhuowen. Zhuowen used the three-fire true mirror one after another, and was already unbearably weak. How could he possibly be Shi Shenhong's match? The instant Shi Shenhong landed beside him, he punched Zhuowen in the abdomen. Zhuowen suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on the ground on one knee. His breathing became extremely hurried. Shi Shenhong took out a ring and took it out, enveloping Zhuowen's surroundings. It turned into a golden light screen, wrapping Zhuowen's entire person inside. After doing these, Shi Shenhong no longer paid attention to Zhuowen. Instead, he rushed out explosively, heading towards Sikong Chiyu, not far away. Chapter 3873. Sikong Chiyu was frightened out of his wits. The instant Shi Shenhong bound Zhuowen, he unleashed his movement technique and desperately fled into the distance. After the Tri-Fire True Mirror's attack failed, he knew that he no longer had the chance to kill Shi Shenhong. Rumble! A terrifying momentum resounded from the space beside Sikong Chiyu. Then, that space collapsed as a divine spear brimming with mighty divine might shot towards Sikong Chiyu's ribs at an extremely tricky angle. Sikong Chiyu's pupils constricted. His feet took a profound step, barely dodging this divine spear. The divine spear swept past his side, and then under Sikong Chiyu's disbelieving gaze, the divine spear suddenly swept, the body of the spear heavily smashing into Sikong Chiyu's ribs. Puchi! Sikong Chiyu spat out a mouthful of blood. His figure flew out in a sorry state. The terrifying spear intent drilled into his body like maggots, wantonly destroying all the meridians in his body. A palm suddenly grasped the divine spear's handle, and then the space shattered, and Shi Shenhong's tyrannical figure stepped out. I'm a person who cherishes talent. If you weren't a member of the C family, I would definitely spare your life. Speaking up to here, Shi Shenhong sighed rather regretfully and continued, Unfortunately, you're actually a member of the C family, so you must die. Rumble! As soon as his voice fell, Shi Shenhong's eyes surged with killing intent. His right foot took a step forward, and layers of phantoms overlapped in the air, and he appeared in front of Sikong Chiyu before the phantoms disappeared. Sikong Chiyu sighed lightly. He knew that he couldn't escape death today. Since he had to die in the end, he would rather die in battle. Clang! A piercing cold light rose and broke through the sky. Sikong Chiyu drew his divine saber, his eyes overflowing with battle intent, and saber light flickered. Futile resistance. Shi Shenhong's eyes flashed with ridicule. The divine spear in his hand swept out, and the spear flickered with vast divine might. Only to hear a clang, the saber and spear collided, and dazzling sparks burst forth in the void. Layers of formless energy ripples spread out in all directions in a ring-shaped direction. With the divine spear in hand, Shi Shenhong's attacks were grand and powerful. He was like an invincible god. Sikong Chiyu practically resisted with all his might, and he exerted all his ability. But the numerous layers of saber insight he executed were all easily dealt with by Shi Shenhong. Sikong Chiyu discovered sorrowfully that the disparity between her and Shi Shenhong was too great. It wasn't just because of the difference in cultivation, but also because of the divine artifacts they possessed. Sikong Chiyu's divine saber was only a rank 6 divine weapon, while Shi Shenhong's divine spear was a rank 7 divine weapon. The two simply weren't on the same level. Kacha! The two of them exchanged a few hundred moves in succession. Suddenly, the divine blade in Sikong Chiyu's hand emitted a sound that caused one's heart to palpitate. After that, Sikong Chiyu discovered to her astonishment that countless cracks had appeared on the surface of her divine blade. These cracks were as messy and dense as a spider web, and they continued to spread out from the surface of the blade as if they were alive. Finally, with a crisp sound, the divine blade collapsed, shattering into countless metal pieces. Shi Shenhong laughed nastily. His right hand that was holding the spear suddenly tightened. Then, with a shake of his wrist, the divine spear swept over and smashed into Sikong Chiyu's chest. Uffed! Sikong Chiyu spat out a mouthful of blood. Her chest caved in several inches, and she fell from the sky in a sorry state. After smashing through several mountain peaks, she finally collapsed in a valley. Shenhong landed in the valley expressionlessly. He silently looked at Sikong Chiyu, who was lying in the center of the valley. Sikong Chiyu also silently looked at Shenhong. Her eyes revealed despair and resentment. Sikong Chiyu, your greatest failure was to cooperate with that Aunt Zhuowen and prematurely exposed your identity. Shenhong said indifferently, winner takes all. There's nothing to say about this. After Sikong Chiyu said this, she silently closed her eyes. She had already accepted her fate. She had concealed herself for close to 10,000 years just to kill Shenhong. But after today, she had lost all of her chances. She couldn't even keep her life. Shenhong was expressionless. Divine power surged in his right palm, manifesting a divine power rope that completely bound Sikong Chiyu. Shenhong lifted Sikong Chiyu and left the valley. After a short while, he once again arrived at Zhuowen's location. He saw Zhuowen sitting dispiritedly inside the light shield formed by the ring. He heard the sound of Shenhong's figure flashing past and slowly raised his head. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. Shenhong silently looked at the light shield surface that was slightly dim. He sneered and said, "This ring is also a heaven-breaking rank 7 divine artifact. In your current state, you can't break it at all. No need to struggle in vain." Zhuowen's face was gloomy, especially when he saw the half-dead Sikong Chiyu in Shenhong's hand. A trace of despair rose in his heart. The gap between him and Shenhong was really too big. His current cultivation was only at the middle stage of the void god transformation. Even his divine soul cultivation was only at the heaven-breaking 6th transformation. The reason why he dared to cooperate with Sikong Chiyu to deal with Shenhong was mainly because of the 3 Fire True Mirror's power. Unfortunately, the 3 Fire True Mirror failed on the verge of success in the end. And now, he had no means to deal with Shenhong at all. Right now, he was a fish on Shenhong's chopping board at his mercy. Shenhong saw Zhuowen remain silent, and his brows furrowed slightly. He continued, "You don't have to pretend to be mute. Hand over the 3 Fire True Mirror now, and perhaps I might be lenient." Zhuowen sneered and still didn't speak. He knew that it was useless to say anything. Shenhong snorted coldly. He lifted Zhuowen by the collar and unceremoniously tore off the spirit ring on his finger. However, after his divine sense destroyed the restrictions on the surface of the spirit ring, his expression instantly became ugly, because he only found a small amount of chaos crystals and low-grade divine medicines in the spirit ring. There was no trace of the 3 Fire True Mirror at all. "Speak. Where exactly is the 3 Fire True Mirror? You actually have another world on you?" As Shenhong spoke, he suddenly let out a soft sound of surprise. When his divine sense swept over Zhuowen's body, he detected an abnormality. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. His great world had always been hidden very well. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to detect it at all. Could it be that Shenhong could detect his great world? Shenhong's divine sense swept over again, and a trace of mockery appeared in his eyes. Then Zhuowen saw Shenhong holding the divine spear and suddenly thrust it at his shoulder. All of a sudden, wherever the divine spear passed by, the surrounding space would collapse. Shenhong's divine spear was called the Boundless Sky-Piercing Spear. It could pass through most dimensional spaces at will. Zhuowen's great world could actually be considered a type of dimensional space. With the characteristics of the Boundless Sky-Piercing Spear, it wasn't difficult to break through dimensional spaces and find Zhuowen's great world. Uft, Zhuowen's shoulder blade was pierced, and blood spurted out, forming a bright rain of blood in the air, rustling as it fell. Chapter 3874. Dokyo opened his eyes and looked at the slovenly Taoist in confusion. "Master, what's wrong?" he asked. As soon as Dokyo finished speaking, the entire macro world began to shake violently. Waves tens of thousands of feet high rose from the lake beside them. The ground around them began to crack, forming terrifying fissures. It was as if a deep abyss had appeared. "Master, what's going on?" Fear appeared on Dao Jing's face, and his entire body trembled. By his side, the foolish smile on Dao Kong's face disappeared completely. He hugged his head and squatted on the ground, trembling non-stop. Boom! The sky of the great world was torn open, and a divine spear swept up a piercingly cold hurricane, surging out violently before finally stabbing heavily into the ground. The slovenly Taoist's pupils constricted. He saw a figure standing on one leg at the end of the divine spear. He crossed his arms and looked down coldly at the slovenly Taoist. Shi Shenhong, the slovenly Taoist's expression changed drastically. He did not expect Shi Shenhong to enter Zhuowen's macro world. "Where is Zhuowen?" the slovenly Taoist roared. Shi Shenhong looked at the slovenly Taoist in surprise. "Hong Shenwu, you can't even protect yourself now. Why are you worried about others?" The slovenly Taoist clenched his fists tightly. He glared at Shi Shenhong and said, "Zhuowen is from the Hong sect. What did you do to him?" Shi Shenhong's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. He shook his head and answered, "He's not far from death, but you don't have to worry. You'll follow in his footsteps soon." The slovenly Taoist roared angrily. Overwhelming righteousness erupted from his body. He flew into the air like a man of light and charged toward Shi Shenhong. Shi Shenhong shook his head. He opened his right hand and clawed at the air. The surrounding space seemed to have been captured by an invisible force, and it came to a complete standstill. On the other hand, the slovenly Taoist priest, who was flying over with the help of the righteous Qi, suddenly stopped. It was as if time had stopped as he remained motionless in midair. "Hong Shenwu, your cultivation is too weak. Moreover, the nature energy is only effective against evil spirits. It doesn't have much effect on cultivators. In my eyes, you are even more useless than that Zhuowen." Shi Shenhong fiercely swung, and Hong Shenwu was heavily thrown to the ground. The entire ground shook as if it had exploded. The slovenly Taoist priest grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was unbelievably pale. "Master, are you all right?" Dokyo hurried to the sloppy Taoist and helped him up. He looked at Shi Shenhong in horror. Shi Shenhong said indifferently, "I'll deal with you guys later." With that, Shi Shenhong turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the lake. Shi Shenhong's spiritual will swept through the entire great world like a hurricane. He was searching for the exact location of the three-fire true mirror. Not long after, Shi Shenhong found the three fires true mirror at the bottom of an enormous mountain range. It really is the three fires true mirror. This time, I've really searched high and low for it, only to find it by chance. Shi Shenhong held a broken bronze mirror in his hand and couldn't help but laugh at the sky. This time, his harvest was too rich. Not only did he obtain the three fires true mirror, but he also obtained the Heaven and Earth Righteous Sutra that he had always dreamed of. This was simply killing two birds with one stone. Shi Shenhong returned to the lake again, only to see that the three people were no longer there. Shi Shenhong repeatedly scanned the surroundings of the lake with his spiritual will, but he didn't find any traces of the slovenly Taoist priest. Not good. An inexplicable sense of danger rose in Shi Shenhong's mind. Then, the entire great world began to collapse, sweeping up an extremely terrifying explosive energy. The entire great world exploded, collapsed, and compressed. Damn it! This ant is actually self-destructing the great world. Shi Shenhong shouted in horror. Without even thinking, he used the peerless sky-piercing spear to break open space, intending to leave the great world. However, he was still too late. The explosive energy had already spread over, and his left arm was immediately annihilated into powder. However, he managed to enter the dimensional space that the spear had broken open in time. At this moment, Zhuowen in the outside world endured the injuries on his body and released the 3 people from the great world. Then, he took out the divine ship and immediately fled into the distance. "Zhuowen, are you all right?" the slovenly Taoist priest asked worriedly when he saw Zhuowen kneeling on one knee on the ground. His breathing was rapid, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. "I won't die for now." Zhuowen smiled bitterly. His current condition was really too bad. In addition, he had taken the initiative to self-destruct the great world. Even his own foundation was damaged as a result. Boom! Suddenly, a broken divine spear pierced through the air and blasted the side of the divine ship. With a thunderous explosion, the divine ship in midair suddenly collapsed. Terrifying sounds of explosions erupted from the hull of the ship. Zhuowen's expression changed drastically. He roared and waved his sleeve, sweeping the 3 people into his sleeve. Then, he dragged his heavily injured body out of the divine ship. "Die, you ant!" Not long after Zhuowen had flown out of the divine ship, a loud roar rang out. Shi Shenhong had struck Zhuowen's back with his palm. Zhuowen grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell heavily from midair and crashed into the ground. In the deep pit, Zhuowen forced himself to his feet. With a wave of his sleeve, the 3 people appeared beside him. "Sect Master, you guys go first." Zhuowen's eyes shone with a deep chill. He coldly looked at Shi Shenhong in the sky. He already knew that he couldn't leave now. Shi Shenhong definitely wouldn't let him go. Since he had to die in the end, he chose to let the 3 people live. He would hold Shi Shenhong back. At this moment, Shi Shenhong was in an extremely sorry state. His right arm had exploded, and his left leg was missing. 2 fist-sized bloody holes had appeared in his chest, revealing the ghastly white bones inside. Just now, the self-destruction of the great world had caused him too much damage. Now, he didn't even have a 1/10 of his strength left. And all of this had been done by the ant below. "Ant, I'll definitely kill you." Shi Shenhong roared like a wild beast. He was so angry that he'd almost lost his mind. Right now, there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to completely destroy Zhuowen and tear him to pieces. Only then would he be satisfied. Zhuowen forced himself to his feet. His eyes were almost squinted. His eyelids were just too heavy. If not for his willpower, he would have closed his eyes completely. Suddenly, in his blurry vision, a figure blocked his way. He looked up in confusion. He could barely see that the figure was very sloppy, and his clothes were very dirty. "Sect Master," Zhuowen muttered to himself. "Zhuowen, I've cultivated the universal sutra of heaven and earth for tens of thousands of years, and it's not like I haven't gained anything. With your Qi refinement chapter, I've comprehended a new level and obtained new techniques. Today, it's time for this incompetent sect master to protect you." The sloppy Taoist suddenly turned his head and smiled at Zhuowen. Chapter 3875. Zhuowen saw the shabby Taoist master's body emit a golden light that was tens of thousands of feet long. It surrounded his body, and an unprecedentedly powerful aura surged out. It was as if the slovenly Taoist man's accumulated energy was unleashed at that moment. After that, Zhuo Wen felt that his body was being pushed by a force, and he was floating towards the back. He could only watch helplessly as the distance between him and the slovenly Taoist man widened. Faction leader, your righteous energy is no match for Shi Shenhong, Zhuo Wen almost screamed. He wanted to stop the slovenly Taoist man. He waved his hands in the air as if he wanted to pull the slovenly Taoist man back. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. He was too weak. He was too weak to even truss a chicken. Zhuo Wen, take Daokong and Dokyo and leave this place. I'm old, and I've lived long enough. The future of the Hong sect depends on you. I don't ask you to bring the Hong sect to greater heights. I just hope that you can keep the Hong sect alive. Even if it's just a feeble existence, you have to keep the Hong sect alive. Don't let the Hong sect's legacy end in my hands. And Daokong and Dokyo, you're older than them. You're their big brother. You have to take good care of them. Don't let them suffer. The slovenly Taoist priest slowly turned around and looked at Zhuo Wen. The tears at the corners of his eyes became more obvious. Zhuo Wen looked at the slovenly Taoist man in silence. He saw the tears on the slovenly Taoist man's face. He saw the sadness in the slovenly Taoist man's eyes. His heart trembled. His eyes reddened. He could feel the slovenly Taoist man's determination to die. He knew that the slovenly Taoist man was going to give it his all. He wanted to buy time for himself, Daokong, and Dokyo to escape. Hong Shenwu, you think a piece of trash like you can stop me? Shi Shenhong gloomily looked at Hong Shenwu, the corners of his mouth revealing a mocking smile. The slovenly Taoist man's eyes were calm. The golden light that surged out of his body became brighter and brighter. Whether or not I'm trash, you'll know soon enough. Hong Shenwu's voice was like thunder resounding through the heavens and earth. It was vast and mighty like a great bell. Shi Shenhong's expression changed. He actually felt an unprecedented sense of danger from Hong Shenwu's voice. Boom! Suddenly, Hong Shenwu moved. It was fine if he didn't move, but once he did, he shocked heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, Hong Shenwu appeared in front of Shi Shenhong. His fists shot out like lightning, bringing with them golden light as they smashed towards Shi Shenhong. Shi Shenhong raised his spear and struck out. Instantly, it collided with Hong Shenwu's fist. Shi Shenhong's expression also changed. The scene of absolute suppression that he had imagined didn't happen at all. Hong Shenwu's fists were as hard as metal. When they collided with the divine spear, a series of clanging sounds could be heard. Moreover, each collision was like a force of 10,000 caddies, bringing great pressure to Shi Shenhong. Shi Shenhong's expression changed greatly. His heart was filled with doubt. Didn't Hong Shenwu's righteous energy only have a suppressive effect on evil spirits? It shouldn't have any effect on cultivators. But now, Hong Shenwu seemed to have been reborn. He could actually transform the righteous energy into his own strength and suppress Shi Shenhong. Not far away, Zhuo Wen, who was protecting Daokong and Dokyo, also looked at Hong Shenwu in shock. The power Hong Shenwu was displaying now was actually similar to his vast, grand mist god force, even though they were different methods. This was because he sensed both the overwhelming righteous aura and the primordial aura from the power Hong Shenwu was displaying. Zhuo Wen recalled the scene he had seen in the secret room in the ruins of the Hong sect. His expression couldn't help but become complicated. At that time, he hadn't been able to confirm Hong Shenwu's identity, but now he was certain that Hong Shenwu was the founder of the Hong sect. However, what Zhuo Wen didn't understand was that Hong Shenwu had successfully merged the righteous energy and grand mist aura into a new power. Moreover, This new power didn't just have a suppressive effect on evil spirits, it also had a strong suppressive effect on ordinary cultivators. Then why didn't Hong Shenwu use this new power to resist those cultivators who came to rob the Hong sect? Zhuowen suddenly recalled the sloppy Taoist gaze when he pushed him away. His heart trembled. He had an ominous feeling. The reason why the sloppy Taoist hadn't used this new power was very likely that there were great restrictions on using it. Otherwise, there was no way he wouldn't have used it earlier. Boom, boom, boom. In the air, the sloppy Taoist and Shi Shenhong continuously clashed, erupting with terrifying energy ripples. Zhuowen, along with Dao Gong and Dokio, could only silently watch all this from afar. Ah, how is this possible? Hong Shenwu, who are you? Why do you have this power? A miserable cry came from midair. Shi Shenhong's wretched figure fell from the clouds. Zhuowen focused his eyes and saw that the divine spear in Shi Shenhong's hand had broken into two. His body was also covered in blood. Although Shi Shenhong was strong, he had experienced the battle between Sikong Qiyu and Zhuowen and was already heavily injured. Moreover, after Hong Shenwu erupted with this new power, not only was his strength not inferior to Shi Shenhong at his peak, it was even stronger. Boom! When Shi Shenhong fell in midair, an intense golden light suddenly appeared above the clouds. Then, a figure appeared in the golden light and quickly fell, catching up to Shi Shenhong's figure. This figure was the sloppy Taoist. His gaze was cold and emotionless. He silently looked at Shi Shenhong and punched out, smashing onto Shi Shenhong's chest. Hong Shenwu, Shi Shenhong, roared towards the sky. The energy in his body was like a water pump that was operating to the limit. It quickly surged and enveloped his body. He knew that he couldn't dodge and could only take this attack head-on. Boom! In midair, the two figures collided. Then, Zhuowen heard Shi Shenhong's miserable cry. He saw Shi Shenhong's figure rapidly fall downwards, smashing into a valley and creating a huge crater. Hong Shenwu floated in midair. He flipped his right hand, and a spirit ring appeared in his palm. He threw the spirit ring to Zhuowen and said, "Zhuowen, this is Shi Shenhong's spirit ring. There's something inside that belongs to you. Take it." Zhuowen subconsciously took the spirit ring and scanned it with his divine sense. He indeed found the three-fire true mirror inside. "Hong Shenwu, you forced me to do this." Below the ground, in the crater, Shi Shenhong roared towards the sky, his eyes scarlet and bloodthirsty. His injuries were too severe, but they could not suppress the crazy anger in the depths of his heart. He was completely enraged. Like a wounded beast, he let out a heart-palpitating howl. Chapter 3876. Hanggu Sacred Scroll. Hong Shenwu's expression changed when he saw the scroll. Hong Shenwu roared and dropped down from the sky, charging at Shi Shenhong. "Hong Shenwu, it's too late. I originally planned to monopolize the secrets on your bodies, but now I'm afraid I can't. Then I can only ask Hanggu Shengzhen's experts to deal with you." Shi Shenhong sneered. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood on the scroll. Then he repeatedly formed seals with his hands, forming an extremely profound seal. Then Shi Shenhong threw the scroll. The scroll flew into the air, bursting with a blazing light. Wherever this strange light appeared, space collapsed inch by inch, forming a whirlpool that Dao Gong could pass through. This whirlpool was pitch black, as if it connected to some kind of space. In the depths of this whirlpool, there was a powerful and terrifying power surging. An arm suddenly stretched out from the whirlpool and tore. The surface of the whirlpool immediately collapsed inch by inch, shattering into countless fragments. Then, the 5 fingers of the arm clenched into a fist and suddenly punched out. Its target was Hong Shenwu, who was diving down from the sky. Hong Shenwu's expression changed greatly. His right hand formed a palm, and with the help of the vast primordial energy, he struck out. The purple gold energy poured out like a tidal wave, covering the entire space. It was so mighty that it caused the entire space to collapse and collapse. When the fist and palm collided, the energy ripples exploded and spread out in all directions in the form of a ring. Then Hong Shenwu let out a muffled groan and was sent flying like a falling leaf. Blood gushed out like a broken faucet, following Hong Shenwu's flight, continuously flying out in midair, blood splashing into the heavens. "Master!" Dokyo couldn't help but call out worriedly when he saw Hong Shenwu being repelled. Zhuowen's pupils constricted. He looked at the arm that stretched out from the whirlpool with extreme fear. The pressure that the arm gave him was too great. It was much more terrifying than Shi Shenhong at his peak. They weren't on the same level at all. Fiend God transformation powerhouse. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. He stared at the whirlpool and thought of a possibility that he didn't want to think of. Shi Shenhong had summoned a Fiend God transformation expert from Shenzhen. Rumble! The vortex in the void completely cracked open, and a stalwart figure slowly walked out from the crack in the space fragments. It was a middle-aged man with a scar between his eyebrows. It looked like he had been stabbed by some kind of sharp weapon. He coldly looked at Hong Shenwu, who was sent flying by him, and then turned around to look at Shi Shenhong, saying indifferently, "Shi Shenhong, what happened? You actually used a god-summoning scroll to summon me." Shi Shenhong lowered his head and said respectfully, "Lord Gu, this is a big matter for you. It's an even greater contribution." "Oh, what is it?" The middle-aged man's interest was piqued as he asked indifferently, "It's about the universal scripture of heaven and earth." Shi Shenhong said respectfully. The middle-aged man's body trembled, and then he stared at Shi Shenhong with a fanatical expression, saying, "Is that true? You found the universal scripture of heaven and earth?" Shi Shenhong was rather calm, saying, "The universal scripture of heaven and earth is on Hong Shenwu. The energy he used just now was righteous energy. Lord Gu should have discovered it." The middle-aged man laughed and took a step forward, charging like a ghost towards Hong Shenwu, who was smashed into a mountain peak. "Shi Shenhong, you've done a great service today. If this person really has the universal scripture of heaven and earth, then Hangwu Shenzhen won't forget to reward you." The middle-aged man's grand voice reverberated through the heavens and earth. Shi Shenhong revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He had no choice but to do this. If he could deal with Hong Shenwu, he wouldn't have given up the universal scripture of heaven and earth. After all, the universal scripture of heaven and earth was too important. After it was taken away by Hangwu Shenzhen, it was impossible for him to cultivate it. But he had no choice. If he didn't summon Hangwu Shenzhen's experts, he might have been killed by Hong Shenwu. After smashing through several mountains, Hong Shenwu finally landed inside a mountain peak. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and the purple gold energy in his body quickly circulated, forcing him to stand up. Then his expression changed greatly as he saw the middle-aged man rush out of the whirlpool. After exchanging a few words with Shi Shenhong, the middle-aged man rushed towards him. He instantly understood that the middle-aged man was Hangwu Shenzhen's expert. His cultivation was around the celestial demon transformation, and he was currently unable to contend with him. Thinking of this, Hong Shenwu suddenly rushed out of the mountain peak and rushed towards Zhuowen. "Hurry up and leave this place!" Hong Shenwu roared, and with a wave of his sleeve, purple gold energy surged out, turning into a purple gold whirlpool that sucked in Zhuowen's group. "Zhuowen, take good care of Daokong and Dokyo, and I'll leave the Dao sect to you." Hong Shenwu looked at the somewhat dazed Zhuowen in the whirlpool and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a gentle smile. Then, Hong Shenwu's sleeve suddenly rolled up, and the purple-gold whirlpool disappeared in front of him. After doing this, Hong Shenwu slowly turned around and coldly looked at the middle-aged man in front of him. The middle-aged man wasn't in a hurry to make a move. Instead, his aura firmly locked onto Hong Shenwu, and his gaze carefully sized up Hong Shenwu in front of him as if he was scanning for prey. He naturally saw Hong Shenwu's small movements, but he didn't care. Sure, Shenhong had already told him that the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra was on this person, so he only cared about this person. Gu Yunfei looked at Shenhong with shining eyes and grinned. I'm Hongwu Shengzhen Gu Yunfei. The Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra is on you? It is indeed on me, Hong Shenwu calmly replied. Then hand it over. I can let you live, Gu Yunfei said matter-of-factly. However, Hong Shenwu smiled. He didn't say anything, and the battle intent in his eyes soared into the sky. Then, he slowly floated in the air, his body surrounded by a blazing purple-gold light. Gu Yunfei frowned slightly. He knew Hong Shenwu's answer. You're not my match, and you still want to fight me? Gu Yunfei coldly said. Can I fight just because I'm not your match? It's just death. What's there to fear? Hong Shenwu laughed loudly, and a blazing purple-gold light surged out of his body, rushing into the clouds. Gu Yunfei, let's fight. Today, even if I die, I won't hand over the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. Hong Shenwu's voice soared into the clouds, resounding between heaven and earth, filled with a heroic flavor. Chapter 38-77. The vast sea was sparkling. Under the crimson light of the setting sun, it looked like an endless sea of blood. It looked quite demonic. The originally calm surface of the sea suddenly surged with terrifying waves. A huge beast rushed out of the sea and into the air. Countless waves splashed in all directions. Under the setting sun, it looked so beautiful. Roar. However, the moment the beast jumped into the air, the space around its head suddenly twisted. It screamed and was torn into pieces by the twisting power of the space. Blood rained down from the sky, and the headless corpse of the giant beast also fell into the sea in a sorry state, splashing out countless silver splashes. In an instant, the surrounding sea was dyed blood red. The space shattered, and a golden light surged out. Then, Zhuowen, with a dull look, brought Daokong and Dokyo to a reef by the sea. Senior brother Daokong, will Master be okay? Dokyo pulled Zhuowen's sleeve and forced a smile on his pale face. Zhuowen looked at Dokyo numbly and said, Sect leader, he should be okay. That's good. I'll send a message to Master and tell him our location. He should be able to join us soon. Dokyo seemed to be relieved. He took out the communication jade charm and was about to send a message. A big hand snatched the communication jade charm. Dokyo let out a low cry and looked at Zhuowen in confusion. Junior brother Dokyo, you stay here and take care of Daokong. I'll go and bring sect leader back. Zhuowen endured the discomfort in his body and smiled at Dokyo. He touched Dokyo's little head and took out several defensive divine artifacts to surround the two little guys. After doing this, Zhuowen comforted Dokyo and summoned 3 divine swords. These 3 swords were the Thunderfire Sword, the Blood Immortal Sword, and the Sacrificial Death Sword. Before the self-destruction of his great world, he had moved most of the things in it out and placed them in many spirit rings on his body. Although Zhuowen had a lot of spirit rings on him, the total amount of space was still far less than the great world. Therefore, Zhuowen had only transferred some of the important things. Many resources were also destroyed because of the explosion. This time, Zhuowen's loss was not small. Xiao Hei's shadow hovered above the Thunderfire Sword's hilt. He looked at Zhuowen with a serious expression and said, Kid, you're too weak. Don't tell me you're really planning to go back to that dangerous place again? Although Xiao He had always lived in the great world, his spiritual will had always been observing the situation outside. Xiao He had naturally seen everything that had happened before, and she also understood the ins and outs of the situation. She knew very well that Zhuowen's current state was extremely poor, and his injuries were extremely serious. In Zhuowen's current state, if he returned to the place where Shi Shunhong wasn't that courting death? Xiao He, please take me there. If I don't go, I won't be able to rest in peace for the rest of my life, Zhuowen said resolutely. Xiao He looked at Zhuowen with a complicated expression. Instead of persuading him, she nodded and roared into the sky. A terrifying sword Qi soared into the sky. The thunder fire sword continued to expand until it was dozens of feet long. The thick sword body emitted a piercingly cold light. Xiao He, I didn't expect you to have cultivated to such a level. Zhuowen felt the terrifying pressure from the thunder fire sword, and a trace of surprise rose in his heart. During this period of time, he had always been cultivating silently. Even in battle, he relied on himself and rarely summoned Xiao He to help him. Now he saw Xiao He again. He didn't expect that not only did Xiao He successfully break through the great world, but she had also reached the 4th level of the great world. Her cultivation speed was actually not slower than his. Xiao He revealed a smug expression and said, "Of course. Don't you see how peerless this Dragon Lord's talent is? My aptitude is outstanding. However, this is also partly due to your primordial stone. I've stayed with you for a long time, and I've also absorbed a portion of the primordial aura. Therefore, my comprehension ability has improved greatly, and my cultivation speed has also undergone a transformation. That's why I can cultivate so quickly." Hearing this, Zhuowen came to a realization. Although the great word stone had always been between his brows, it had imperceptibly influenced him. At the same time that the primordial aura on the surface of the great word stone changed him, it also changed the things around him. The great world was especially affected, and Xiao He, who had been staying in the great world all this time, naturally gained a lot of benefits. Zhuowen climbed onto the thunder fire sword with difficulty. The blood celestial sword and the death sacrifice sword were like the most loyal bodyguards protecting him. Rays of piercing sword light flashed, bursting with an extremely fierce aura. Dokio held Daokong's hand and silently watched Zhuowen's back as he disappeared into the distance. A wooden smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he softly murmured, "Senior brother Daokong, thank you. Thank you for doing so much for the Hong sect. If we weren't sure before, we can be sure now. You will be the future of the Hong sect. You are the last hope of the Hong sect." As soon as he finished speaking, a blazing light surged on Dokio and Daokong's bodies. If one looked closely, the blazing light was actually formed by densely packed and extremely small characters. As the light became more and more intense, Daokong and Dokio's bodies became dimmer and dimmer, as if they would be blown away by the wind at any time. In the end, Daokong and Dokio completely disappeared in the light. At the moment when the light reached its peak, it began to intertwine like lines, and finally revealed a golden ancient book. The ancient book broke through the air and chased after Zhuowen. Zhuowen, who was originally riding the wind on the thunder fire sword, suddenly sensed that something was amiss. He abruptly turned his head, only to see a golden flash charging towards him at an extremely frightening speed. In the blink of an eye, the golden light had completely caught up with him and blocked his path. F***CK, what the hell is this? Xiao He was forced to stop in midair, cursing and swearing. Zhuowen's gaze finally noticed the golden light blocking his path. A golden ancient book was suspended in the middle of the golden light, and on the surface of the book were the words universal scripture of heaven and earth. Zhuowen was stunned. The Golden Book was the universal scripture of heaven and earth, and the ancient book had taken the initiative to chase after him and block his path. What the hell was going on? Just as Zhuowen had a strange expression on his face, the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra obediently fell into his hands. The golden light flickered, illuminating Zhuowen's entire face. Chapter 3878. What's going on? Zhuowen was stunned. He felt as if he had just received a gift from the heavens. Senior Brother Daowen, don't be surprised. This is the complete version of the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. You have already gained our approval, so you are qualified to receive this ancient book. Without any warning, the Golden Book spoke in an immature voice. Zhuowen was no stranger to this voice. It was Dokyo's voice. Junior Brother Dokyo, is that you? Zhuowen asked. It's me. Senior Brother Daowen, Daokong, and I are not humans. Our true forms are the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. Dokyo's voice rang out again. Zhuowen's eyes widened. He could not believe it. After a long pause, he asked, You are the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra? Didn't you say that the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra was destroyed? How could there be a complete version? Dokyo spoke again. His voice was low and filled with sadness. These are all part of the Hong sect's plan to cover up the existence of the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. The Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra that was destroyed was actually a copy. However, it was made so real that even the elites of Hongwu and Shenzhen could not tell that it was a fake. The real Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra was taken away by the founder of the Hong sect. After that, he left for a faraway place. No one knows where he went. You should have guessed it by now. Our master is the founder of the Hong sect, Hong Shunwu. He is still alive. He is still alive because he wants to find the inheritors of the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra and the Hong sect. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect that Daokong and Dokyo's true forms were the original copies of the Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra. But now, after Dao Jing's reminder, he thought of the past with the two of them and believed it. The two little Taoist apprentices had followed Hong Shunwu for so long, but they had never grown up. That was a big problem. Back then, Zhuowen was puzzled as well. However, he did not ask the slovenly Taoist. Now, it seemed that he had found the answer. Senior Brother Daowen, I think you should have thought it through. We have been keeping an eye on you ever since you joined the Hong Triad. Even though the Hong Triad is in decline, it is not something that can be handed over to anyone. But your sincerity and loyalty have influenced us, and you have also gained the approval of our master. Therefore, Daokong and I have revealed our true forms and handed over the real Heaven and Earth Howren Sutra to you. Although the Hong sect is no more, we hope that you can live on. We don't ask you to make the Hong sect rise again, but we hope that the Hong sect will not disappear. Dokyo's voice grew fainter and fainter. Finally, as the golden light dissipated, his voice stopped abruptly. The universal scripture of heaven and earth lay quietly in Zhuowen's palm. Zhuowen's gaze was complicated. He silently looked at the universal scripture of heaven and earth in his hand. In the end, he sighed deeply and kept it in his spirit ring. Little Black, I beg of you, please continue forward. Zhuowen looked straight ahead and said to Xiaohe. Xiaohe hesitated for a moment, but still followed Zhuowen's instructions. She turned into a stream of light and disappeared on the spot. Half a day later, Zhuowen rode on the Thunderfire sword and once again arrived at the mountain range where Shi Shunhong and Hong Shunwu had fought. This mountain range was almost completely razed to the ground. There were even many deep pits of different sizes in many places. From these terrifying terrains, it could be seen how terrifying the battle just now was. Zhuowen endured the pain in his divine soul and used his divine sense to carefully search every corner of this place. However, other than discovering the strong energy ripples in the surroundings, he found nothing. He did not discover Hong Shenwu, Shi Shenhong, or even Lord Gu of Hanwu Shengzhen, who had been summoned by Shi Shenhong from other places. Kid, there's no need to search anymore. The last person Shi Shenhong summoned was an expert in the fiend god transformation state. So what if the sloppy Taoist is strong? He will not be a match for that person in the end. However, you don't have to worry. Hanwu Shengzhen is so precious to the universal scripture of heaven and earth, and the sloppy Taoist has cultivated the universal scripture of heaven and earth. Before obtaining the complete universal scripture of heaven and earth, the sloppy Taoist's life should not be in danger. Xiao He tried to comfort him, but quickly realized that something was wrong. Zhuowen did not react at all. Xiao He flew out of the sword and landed on it. Only then did he realize that Zhuowen had unknowingly fainted. Sigh, this kid is too stubborn. Xiao He shook his head and controlled the thunder fire sword to leave this place. Zhuowen felt like he had a very long dream. In the dream, he saw the sloppy Taoist, Daokong, and Dokyo standing in front of him with strange smiles on their faces. He stood up in surprise and ran towards the three of them. He wanted to grab them tightly and keep calling their names. But time and time again, he missed. The three figures always stopped 5 meters in front of him, but he couldn't get close or touch them no matter how hard he tried. Zhuowen was so tired that he was panting. He stopped in his tracks and placed his hands on his knees, panting heavily. Then he saw 3 pairs of legs appear in front of him. He raised his head and realized that the 3 cultivators were standing in front of him with eerie grins on their faces. Their smiles were bright, but they were filled with a deep chill. They still did not speak and only looked coldly at Zhuowen. Their eyes were filled with an inexplicable meaning. Zhuowen could not help but take a few steps back. When he looked again, the 3 of them had disappeared before his eyes. Then he felt his legs being grabbed by someone. Then he saw the 3 of them sprawled on the ground. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their 6 hands were tightly grabbing onto Zhuowen's trousers. As they grabbed onto their trousers, they screamed miserably. Zhuowen opened his eyes abruptly. He touched his forehead and realized that it was covered in cold sweat. Kid, you're finally awake. You were screaming so loudly just now. Did you have a nightmare? Xiao He hovered at the side and looked at Zhuowen, who had woken up. The worry in his eyes gradually disappeared as he spoke half-jokingly. Zhuowen fell silent. With a thought, a golden book appeared in his palm. On the cover of the book were the words Universal Sutra of Heaven and Earth. So it wasn't a dream. It's all real. Zhuowen blankly kept the Universal Sutra of Heaven and Earth as a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Hong Shenwu, Daokong, and Dokyo were no longer here. Now, he was the only one left. Kid, this isn't your style. The current, you shouldn't be so dispirited. What you should be doing is increasing your strength as much as possible. Then, you should go to Hong Wu Divine Sect and destroy that old bastard Shi Shenhong's prestige. Also, that sect master of yours might not be dead. He might have been taken away to Hong Wu Shengzhen. Isn't Hong Wu Shengzhen's entrance trial about to begin? If you join Hong Wu Shengzhen, that would be equivalent to sneaking in. When the time comes, wouldn't it be convenient for you to find out more about Hong Shenwu? Xiao He looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze, and his voice became exceptionally solemn. Zhuowen's eyes gradually lit up. The previous dispiritedness was also dispelled. Xiao He was right. He didn't have the time to be dispirited. The Hong sect's revenge and Hong Shenwu's whereabouts were still waiting for him. Chapter 3879. Kid, you fainted earlier. I found this in the ruins of the battlefield. Take it. Xiao Hei waved her little paw, and an inconspicuous speck of dust fell into Zhuowen's hand. The remains of a greater world. Zhuowen's divine sense fell into the speck of dust and saw the devastated greater world contained within. The entire greater world had collapsed, and there was almost no place that was intact. It was like a weathered rock that was riddled with holes. The greater world is already like this. It's basically impossible to repair it. Zhuowen sighed. Just as he was about to throw away the speck of dust, a faint purple light suddenly burst out from between his eyebrows. Then Zhuowen discovered in surprise that the greater world stone hidden deep within his eyebrows slowly floated out and entered the depths of the greater world with a whoosh. Then Zhuowen discovered that the greater world stone's purple light became more and more intense. It was as if it had turned into an unprecedented purple sun in the greater world, illuminating the damaged greater world. What was even more bizarre was that Zhuowen sensed a vigorous vitality in this purple sun. Then Zhuowen discovered that the damaged greater world was rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Broken mountain ranges were uprooted from the ground. The collapsed earth was once again closed to form new land. Rainwater fell from the dried-up riverbed, forming a huge river that resembled a swimming dragon. Under the illumination of the purple sun, the devastated greater world gradually recovered its vitality and returned to its original state. When the basic topography of the greater world was restored, the greater world stone floating in the air fell to the ground with a whoosh. Zhuowen could clearly sense that the greater world stone seemed to have fused with the greater world, becoming the core of this greater world. Lush vegetation began to grow in the greater world, vast grasslands, and all kinds of living creatures appeared. In addition, Zhuowen discovered that the various laws of the greater world had been completely restored. They were even more advanced and powerful than before. At this moment, the greater world seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis. It was much more complete than the greater world before it was destroyed. It was on a completely different level. Back then, although the large world was covered in vegetation and the various rules were quite complete, it did not have the ability to give birth to living beings. But at this moment, the great world was like a real world. It could actually give birth to powerful creatures on its own. Its laws were more complete, and the world was more stable. Kid, look at your surprised face. What happened? Xiao Hei asked in bewilderment when she saw Zhuowen grinning. Follow me into the great world, and you'll know, Zhuowen said with a smile. Then he entered the great world with the 3 swords. After entering the great world, Xiao Hei was just about to speak when she felt the terrifying energy surging from the great world. She immediately revealed a look of surprise. This great world, how can it have such rich energy? This is simply better than most of the cultivation holy lands in the 100 outer domains. Xiao Hei was dumbfounded. He found it unbelievable. The supremacy stone has fused with the greater world, causing it to transform. Compared to the past, the current great world is no longer the same as before. Zhuowen's eyes were full of excitement. The rich energy surging in the great world was more surging than any place he had ever seen. It was definitely the best cultivation, holy land he had ever seen. Moreover, Zhuowen found that as he stood in the great world and casually absorbed the energy, the injuries in his body actually showed signs of improvement. This discovery made Zhuowen very happy. Xiao, hey, I need to go into seclusion to recuperate during this period. Remember to wake me up half a month before the entrance trial of Hanwu Shengzhen. Zhuowen gave a few instructions to Xiao Hei. Then he built a thatched hut in the great world. He took out a futon, sat cross-legged on it. and began to absorb the surging energy in the great world. The energy in the great world was not the usual chaotic energy. Instead, it was a kind of aura that was suffused with purple light. It was similar to the Hongmeng aura that Zhuowen had encountered previously, but it was much weaker than the Hongmeng aura. The level of this purple energy was much higher than the chaotic energy. As Zhuowen absorbed the purple energy, the injuries in his body rapidly healed. Moreover, his cultivation, which had been stagnant, showed signs of a breakthrough at this moment. Time passed minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. During these 3 months, the transformation in the great world continued. Under the influence of the Supremacy Stone, the laws in the great world became more complete, and the terrain became more vast. In particular, the purple energy flowing in the great world became denser. In these 3 months, with the help of the purple energy, Zhuowen's physical body and spiritual soul injuries had all recovered to their peak. His cultivation had even improved by 1 step. From the middle stage of the empty God transformation realm, he had jumped to the peak of the empty God transformation realm. At this moment, Xiaohe knocked on the door of Zhuowen's thatched hut. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He slowly stood up, and the crisp sound of large and small pearls falling on a jade plate rang out from within his body. His eyes were deep and filled with a divine light, and an extremely terrifying power surged within his body. He was only half a step away from stepping into the heaven-crushing 5 changes, the 5 elements transformation realm. When that time came, his strength would undergo an earth-shattering transformation. Creak! Zhuowen opened the door to see Xiaohe floating in front of him. Kid, the entrance trial of Hong Wu Shengzhen will begin in half a month. You should set off now. Xiaohe said in a low voice. I understand, Xiaohe. Thank you for your hard work this time. As Zhuowen spoke, he left the great world and flew toward the great music bar. The owner of the great music bar, Che Xiaorui, appeared in the hall. She had a slender male pet in her right arm, and her eyes, which were as big as a bull's, were fixed on the young man in the hall. Brother Dawen, you're really persistent. You're actually planning to participate in the entrance trial of Hong Wu Shengzhen. Che Xiaorui put down the male pet in her arms and strode into the hall. She sat down on the main seat in the hall. Zhuowen cupped his fists at Che Xiaorui and said with a smile, There's no reason for me to go back on my decision. I'm definitely going to participate in the entrance trial of Hong Wu Shengzhen this time. So, I'll have to trouble you this time. Che Xiaorui waved her hand and said nonchalantly, It's a small matter. After all, I'm the one who gave you this trial token. If you want to participate in the entrance trial of Hong Wu Shengzhen, you'll need someone from the great music bar to guide you. As she spoke, Che Xiaorui took out her communication jade and sent a message. After a while, a middle-aged man with white hair walked into the hall. Chapter 3880. Xiao Dao. Hong Wu Shengzhen's entrance trial is in half a month. Take Brother Dawen to Hong Wu Shengzhen. Che Xiaorui said in a low voice. Lu Xiaodao cupped his hands respectfully and said, Don't worry, workshop owner. I'll definitely bring Brother Dawen to Hong Wu Shengzhen safely. Che Xiaorui nodded and then smiled at Zhuowen. Brother Dawen, Xiaodao will take care of your matters. Thank you, workshop owner. Zhuowen cupped his hands and thanked her. Lu Xiaodao then arranged for Zhuowen to stay at the Great Music Workshop for the night. The next day, he took Zhuowen away from the Great Music Workshop. Hong Wu Shengzhen was in the territory of Liyuan Main region. It was extremely far from Zhongzhou. Even a God realm transformation powerhouse might not be able to reach the border of Liyuan Main region, even if he used his movement technique at full speed and ran day and night for 3 years. However, There was a direct teleportation array between Zhongzhou and Hanwu Sage Continent, one of the 4 continents of Liyuan main region. Using this teleportation array, it only took 1 hour to reach Hanwu Sage Continent. Hanwu Sage Continent was naturally the continent where Hanwu Shenzhen was located. As for the other 3 continents of Liyuan main region, they corresponded to the names of the other 4 Shenzhen. In addition to the 4 continents, Liyuan main region had other large areas. Those areas were occupied by the other superforces of Liyuan main region. However, they were the most famous in the 4 Shenzhen. Therefore, most cultivators' knowledge of Liyuan main region stopped at the 4 continents. This is Zhongzhou Divine Palace. It was built by most of the forces in Zhongzhou. In this Divine Palace, there is a giant teleportation array that can connect to Liyuan main region. In order to build such a giant teleportation array, Zhongzhou spent a huge amount of money and manpower. It took thousands of years to successfully build it. Lu Xiaodao pointed at the huge Divine Palace in front of him and introduced its origin to Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with awe. Zhuowen looked at the temple in front of him with amazement in his eyes. The Divine Palace in front of him occupied a vast area and was made up of white jade. The Divine Palace's appearance was majestic and magnificent, even more majestic than most of the sects of the superforces in the central province. Zhuowen found it hard to imagine that such a huge and magnificent temple was built just to carry a teleportation array. Just how complicated and huge was this teleportation array? Brother Daowen, follow me into the temple. Lu Xiaodao smiled as he led Zhuowen into the temple. There were many cultivators in the central continent Divine Palace. They came and went in an endless stream. Zhuowen could see that most of the people who came in and out of the central continent Divine Temple were merchants who came to do business in the central continent and the Liyuan main region. Through the difference between the 2 regions, they earned a lot of profits by buying and selling at a profit. After entering the central state Divine Palace, there was an inner hall. The surface of the inner hall was surging with dazzling array Dao ripples. He could see that there were many terrifying array formations and restrictions in the surroundings. Moreover, these array formations and restrictions were far beyond his level because he could only barely understand a small part of them. On both sides of the inner hall's entrance, there were 2 old men sitting cross-legged. Although their eyes were closed, the aura emitted from their bodies was extremely powerful. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. These 2 old men were both at the early stage of the God Domain transformation realm. They were powerhouses at the same level as Sikong Chiu. Just the inner hall gatekeepers were such powerhouses. It could be seen how much importance the central province forces attached to this temple. Where do you 2 plan to go? When Zhuowen and Lu Xiaodao arrived at the entrance of the inner hall, the old man in green on the left slowly opened his eyes and looked at the 2 indifferently. He asked calmly, "We plan to go to the Hong Marshal Saint Continent." Lu Xiaodao said respectfully, 50,000 chaos crystals per person. The old man in green said indifferently. Lu Xiaodao took out a spirit ring and handed it to the old man in green. The old man in green casually scanned it and discovered that there were indeed 100,000 chaos crystals inside. He put it away casually and nodded at the 2, indicating for them to enter. Entering the inner hall, Zhuowen discovered that the space inside the inner hall was extremely vast. In the centermost ground of the inner hall, there was an extremely complicated array pattern. This array pattern was circular. The area was so large that it practically occupied 2/3 of the entire inner hall. At this moment, this array pattern emitted a faint dim light. Looking carefully, there were fine runes floating inside the dim light. The instant Zhuowen looked at this array pattern, His face changed slightly, revealing a solemn look. If it was said that he could only understand a small part of the array outside the inner hall, then this teleportation array pattern inside the inner hall, he was practically clueless. It was seriously too profound. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. No wonder this teleportation array needed several thousand years to build. Such a complicated array pattern was indeed not something that could be set up overnight, unless it was a top-notch array, Tao Divine Master. But Central State clearly did not have this level of array Tao Divine Master. Brother Dawen, let's just enter this array pattern. This teleportation array will automatically activate and send us to Hong Marshall Saint Continent. As Lu Xiaodao spoke, he led Zhuowen into the complicated array pattern. Sure enough, after a while, the surrounding array pattern emitted a blazing white light. Then, the complicated array pattern beneath their feet suddenly lit up. Countless complicated runes separated from the array pattern and floated in the air. These runes combined together and formed a huge flood dragon that swam in the air. After circling once, it swooped down vertically and sank into Zhuowen and Lu Xiaodao's bodies. Zhuowen only felt countless runes flash before his eyes. Then, the runes blurred and turned into a blazing white light. Finally, his vision turned black. His body seemed to be floating, and there was no gravity around him. However, he could strangely sense that his body was moving quickly. The speed was so fast that even if he used all his strength, he could not control his body. This feeling of losing control was very similar to a small teleportation array, but it was more intense and lasted for a longer time. About an hour later, Zhuowen discovered that the feeling of losing control of his body gradually dissipated, and the darkness in front of his eyes also slowly disappeared. Then, his feet landed on solid ground, and he stood firmly on a certain piece of hard ground. When he opened his eyes, he finally saw the scene in front of him. What appeared in front of him was the interior of a large hall. The area was not large and was slightly smaller than the inner hall of the Central State main hall. Outside the teleportation array stood a young woman. She looked coldly at Zhuowen and Lu Xiaodao, who were inside the teleportation array, and said, "Where did you come from? Why did you come to Hong Marshall Saint Continent?" Zhuowen was startled. What was going on? Why was he being questioned the moment he arrived at Hong Marshall Saint Continent? Lu Xiaodao clearly understood the rules here and quickly said with a smile, "We came from the Central State of Wukong State. We came here to bring the juniors to participate in Hong Marshall Shengzhen's entrance trial." Chapter 3881. The young woman led Zhuowen and Lu Xiaodao out of the main hall and into a hall in the side hall. There were a total of 7 groups of people chatting in the main hall of the side hall. When they noticed the arrival of the young woman, their voices quieted down. They looked curiously at Zhuowen and Lu Xiaodao, who had just entered. This is the gathering place for the cultivators who are participating in the entrance trial of the Wukong State region. Since you are also from the Wukong State region, please wait here. The divine ship of the Hong Marshall Sacred Sect will arrive soon. I will inform you then. The young woman glanced at Zhuowen and Lu Xiaodao before leaving the hall. Could this fellow be vice owner Lu of the great music mill in the Central State? In the hall, a tall and thin, middle-aged man in a green robe looked at Lu Xiaodao with surprise in his eyes. "You are Perfected Zhang, from the Central State Primordial Fire Tower." Lu Xiaodao was familiar with the green-robed man and recognized the middle-aged man's true identity at a glance. Lu Xiaodao and Perfected Zhang immediately chatted for a while. Perfected Zhang then looked at Zhuowen, who was beside Lu Xiaodao, and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that the great music mill would send a disciple to participate in Hongwu Shengzhen's entry trial. I remember that the owner of the great music, Mill said that she didn't intend to use the quota in her hands. Lu Xiaodao laughed dryly and said, "Perfected Zhang, you misunderstand. The Great Music Mill indeed doesn't intend to participate in Hangwu Shengzhen's entry trial. This person isn't a disciple of the Great Music Mill." Lu Xiaodao gave a brief introduction, explaining the process of Zhuo when obtaining the quota token. Perfected Zhang then realized that the young man brought by Lu Xiaodao was indeed not a disciple of the Great Music Mill, but a rogue cultivator. However, Perfected Zhang shook his head inwardly. He could see at a glance that Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the Void God transformation stage. With such a cultivation, there was no way he could compete in this entry trial. The two disciples that the Primordial Fire Tower had brought were the two most outstanding geniuses in the Primordial Fire Tower. Their cultivation had already reached the 5 elements transformation stage. It wasn't just the Primordial Fire Pagoda. The juniors from the other factions present were all at least at the 5 elements transformation stage. Zhuowen curiously sized up the disciples brought by the 7 groups of people in the hall. Among them, the most eye-catching ones should be the 2 disciples brought by the True Fire Tower. The 2 disciples were a man and a woman. The man was handsome, while the woman was beautiful. The reason Zhuowen paid attention to this couple was mainly because they were the strongest among the juniors brought by the 7 groups of people. From their auras, Zhuowen could tell that the man was at the peak of the 5 elements transformation stage, while the woman was at the late stage. From Daoist Zhang's words, Zhuowen learned the names of the couple. The man's name was Li Miao, and the woman's name was Lu Hong. This young man and woman were the most outstanding disciples of True Fire Pagoda, other than the True Fire Tower. Zhuowen discovered that although the other 6 groups of people were all rather powerful forces in the central continent, they were at most on the same level as the True Fire Tower, or even worse. As for the disciples they sent, they were slightly weaker than Li Miao and Lu Hong. The people from the Hong Martial Divine Sect aren't here yet? Lu Xiaodao looked around the hall and couldn't find anyone from the Hong Martial Divine Sect, so he couldn't help but ask curiously. The Hong Martial Divine Sect could be considered a branch of the strongest Hong Martial Shengzhen in the Wukong region. This time, it was Hong Martial Shengzhen's entrance training, so the Hong Martial Divine Sect would definitely send their disciples to participate. They shouldn't be here yet. Daoist Zhang's eyes flickered as he suddenly whispered, "Do you guys know what happened in the Hong Martial Divine Sect a while ago?" The leaders in the hall all revealed excited expressions. "Of course we know. I remember that not long ago, there was a terrifying energy explosion in the Hong Martial Divine Sect. It was said that a portion of the buildings in the sect were destroyed. Other than that, many of the upper echelons of the Hong Martial Divine Sect were said to have fallen in that battle. It could be said that they suffered heavy losses. In the hall, everyone was discussing animatedly. They were obviously interested in the battle that happened in the Hong Martial Divine Sect. Even the arrogant True Fire Pagoda's disciples, Li Miao and Lu Hong, were listening attentively with admiration on their faces. They were obviously convinced by the person who caused the chaos in the Hong Martial Divine Sect. Zhuowen listened to everyone's discussion silently with a calm gaze. If these people knew that the person who caused the chaos in the Hong Martial Divine Sect was this harmless-looking young man, who knew what they would think? Who is it? Who has the guts and strength to cause trouble in the Hong Martial Divine Sect? In the hall, a middle-aged man asked curiously. Daoist Zhang hesitated for a while before saying, "I heard that it was a remnant of the Hong sect." Later on, the Hong Martial Divine Sect master, Shi Shenhong, and Great Elder Sikong Chiyu personally chased after the remnant. In the end, the sect master returned with heavy injuries, while Great Elder Sikong Chiyu was said to have died outside. Everyone was shocked. They were very clear about Shi Shenhong's strength. He was a mid-stage God domain transformation expert. As for the Hong martial divine sect's great elder, Sikong Chiyu, although not as strong as Shi Shenhong, she was still an early-stage God domain transformation expert. When these two experts went to chase after the remnant of the Hong sect, one died and the other was injured. This was too frightening. Hearing up to here, Zhuowen sighed in his heart. He knew that Sikong Chiyu was killed by Shi Shenhong in the end and couldn't escape. Didn't they say that the Hong sect had declined long ago? How can they still have such a terrifying expert? Someone asked in confusion. It's said that the one who took action was Hong Shenwu. He's the founder of the Hong sect. Fortunately, Shi Shenhong summoned the Hong martial Shenzhen's experts and took down Hong Shenwu. Daoist Zhang said in a low voice. Everyone was relieved. So it was the founder of the Hong sect, Hong Shenwu. No wonder he could cause such a ruckus in the Hong martial divine sect. Even Shi Shenhong and Sikong Chiyu weren't his match. They were the upper echelons of the Central State's major powers. They knew a little about the Hong sect's past. They knew that Hong Shenwu was originally a genius of the Hong martial Shenzhen. He left the Hong martial Shenzhen and came to the Central State to establish the Hong sect. However, for some unknown reason, he angered the Hong martial Shenzhen and was annihilated by the experts sent by the Hong martial Shenzhen. They all thought that Hong Shenwu had died long ago. They didn't expect him to live until now and cause such a ruckus in the Hong martial divine sect. Zhuowen clenched his fists, the flames of anger burning in his heart. He remembered Hong Shenwu's instructions to him. Other than anger, there was more bitterness in his heart. Hong Shenwu's instructions to him were simple. It was to not let the Hong sect's inheritance be severed and to take good care of Daokong and Dokyo. But he messed it all up. Even Dokyo and Daokong sacrificed themselves to become the original copy of the Heaven and Earth Howren scripture,